I'd like to call this special council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exception of Councillors Zanko and Butler.
Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Mcdermott.
For tonight, yes, anyway. In the closed session, under item C,
Right.
I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on the agenda item listed above, as I have a family member that works for the YMCA of Niagara.
Okay. And you have to complete that yellow form. Perfect. Any other disclosures? If not, Councillor Dubineau, you have a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes. Just give me 1 second. The council does now go into closed session at 5:02 p.m. to discuss the following. Pursuant to Section 239(2)J of the Municipal Act 2001, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that may belong to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value re cell towers. Pursuant to Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, re-proposed acquisition of land parking, and pursuant to Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, re-YMCA of Niagara Fort Erie location.
Are there any questions or comments? Madam Clerk, since Councillor Mcdermott has a pecuniary interest in C, should we be dealing with that separately?
Yes, we'll deal with them in order, and when we get to that one on the agenda, he'll leave the room.
Okay. No. The motion to go into closed session, should we deal with that separately? I think we should. Why don't we deal with A and B then? All those in favor of going into closed session? None opposed? And then we'll deal with C. All those in favor of going into closed session? That is carried. Right. Okay, so we can go into closed session, then we'll deal with the first two items.
Sorry, I put
Councillor Zanko, you have the resolution for us to return to or move out of closed session?
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 6:15 p.m. with respect to the following items.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And the, beg your pardon? Okay, please do that then.
Item A, with regard to cell towers, that staff proceed as directed. Item B, with regard to proposed acquisition of land, parking, that staff also proceed as directed.
Okay. Did you cover the...
And following our regular council meeting, we will reconvene once again back into closed session to discuss the YMCA of Niagara.
Thank you. Now I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, I think you have the resolution to adjourn out of the special council. Well, we can't. Can't adjourn out of the special council meeting. It's been recessed. Okay, so. Get organized here. So I'm going to call this regular council meeting to order, and we're going to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. Madam Clerk, would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think, and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
There is no addendum this evening. There are a few announcements. I'm going to start with the announcement that after a year of construction, Bay Beach is almost completed for the enjoyment of the public. On Sunday, May the 25th, 2019, the official Bay Beach grand reopening will be held starting at 11 a.m. at Bay Beach. This is a family-focused event, and we invite everyone to come out to the day to enjoy the beach, the new park facilities, a variety of family entertainment, the first annual Bay Beach Sandcastle competition. And I want to remind councillors that we've all received a little bucket with sand, with paraphernalia to assist us. So you've got a month to practice. There'll be food trucks and much more. We also invite everyone to participate in the first annual Bay Beach Sandcastle competition, so it'll be more than just the councillors. There will be a professional and a family friends category with prizes for both. No experience is required, but certainly would be beneficial. So bring your sand bucket and shovel, your sunscreen, and your creativity. Until then, Bay Beach will be closed as construction is continuing. Any of you have had an opportunity to view the project from the street, I'm sure will be impressed by what is there. It's going to be fantastic, and it's truly going to show what you can actually buy for $3 million. But it is unbelievable. I was there yesterday. For more information about the grand reopening, the Sandcastle competition, admission, parking, and beach rules, please go to the Town of Fort Erie website. Second announcement is on April the 20th, so just a few days ago, couple in Fort Erie, Harry and Irene Armstrong, celebrated their 79th wedding anniversary. They were married on April the 20th, 1940, and I'm going to speculate without fear of contradiction that there was no one in this room born at that time. So 79 years. Harry is 99. Irene is 97. They're both still living in their own home, and they're both still, I'm sure, arguing as couples do. On Friday this week, April the 26th, CKTB is going to be in Fort Erie. They'll be having their morning program here. There'll be a number of interviews, and so all of you, I would suggest, if you have an opportunity, tune into 610 CKTB. On Saturday of this week, April the 27th, will be the 29th Annual Fort Erie Firefighter Awards Banquet held at the Leisureplex. It's an opportunity each year for the firefighters to be recognized for their service to our community. And on April the 28th, which is Sunday, at 11:45 at the Workers' Monument here at the Municipal Center, there will be a ceremony for the National Day of Mourning to recognize injured and killed workers. So that's it for the announcements. I am going to announce that I'm going to be moving up on the agenda the presentation by the Boys and Girls Club, because they'll be out of here very quickly. So we'll let them go first, and then they can be done. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubineau.
Thank you, Your Worship. Declaring a conflict on item on the agenda, Section 14, the proposed bylaw 56-2019 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended, removal of holding provision, Peacebridge Village, Phase 1, Ashton Homes Western Limited, Aldo Rosillo, as I live in a subdivision developed by Ashton Homes Western Limited that has not yet been transferred to the municipality.
Okay. Any others? Madam Clerk, I have a pecuniary interest with respect to bylaw 58 for 2019. Scott Hunter is a client of my law firm. So when we get to that, I'm going to ask whoever has the resolutions to exclude 56 and 58 so that they can be dealt with separately. A number of upcoming public meetings. There's a property rezoning with respect to 63 Belfast South Road. That's going to be dealt with on Monday, May the 13th, 2019, here in the council chambers at 6 p.m., as are all of the following reports. And the information report for each of these property rezoning matters and public meetings will be available on the town's website on May the 8th, 2019. There's also a property rezoning public meeting for Ashton Homes Western Limited with respect to Upper Canada Consultants as their agent. That relates to Block 70 of the Peace Bridge Village subdivision. Again, Monday, May the 13th, 2019 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Also a property rezoning with respect to property owned by Dave Cook at 1931 Norris Avenue. Again, May the 13th, 2019. And a final public meeting on that date with respect to the Glennie Drain Engineers Report presented by K Smart Associates Limited. Same date, same place, May 13th, 2019, 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. That then takes us to the Regional Councillors Report. Good evening, Councillor Encina.
Your Worship, council members, I'm going to jump in both feet as I have the last month. At the recent NPCA meeting, the financial and audit statements were presented by KPMG. There were no concerns raised by KPMG in that the accounting process was done correctly. This did not cover any line items that would have questionable expenses. A forensic audit is being explored with a limited time frame that we'd be looking at rather than questioning the whole year. On May 3rd, the Auditor General will be attending the full board meeting of directors for the NPCA to give a report and answer some questions that have come up and have arisen. I will be questioning whether the Auditor General's team actually looked at criminality with regard to finances and other related matters. As this council is aware, my term on the NPCA is coming to a close. I will be leaving the position so Leah Fior can continue the work being done putting the NPCA back on track. It is believed that the new CAO will be in place in approximately 7 weeks, and the governance committee that governance policies and procedures will be ironed out during that same time frame. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Foundation has raised an ire and has been in the media prior and been brought up here. I am now currently the chair of the Conservation Foundation. Excuse me. Councillor Rob Foster, Regional Councillor Rob Foster and myself, along with the CAO of the NPCA, will be looking after the foundation matters until a new board is in place. This position is volunteer, and there is no remuneration attached as we go forward. An audit of the foundation is now underway, and we'll be presented with the findings in June, I believe. The Fort Erie Conservation Women's Auxiliary Fund, the money that was left behind by this group, is currently standing at approximately $90,000. This will continue. It will continue to be given as bursaries to students pursuing environmental education, as was described by that group. There are many other programs that are funded by the foundation and that are being examined. The foundation grant program will soon be made available to those wishing to apply. The grant is to support local organizations within the NPCA watershed doing environmental initiatives. So if there are any groups in Fort Erie looking for funding, those grants are going to be made available. To those who had doubt that the NPCF about the perceived direction, the way it was going, be rest assured, everything is under the microscope now with Councillor Foster and myself, and we will continue to forge ahead. If anybody would like to help out with the foundation, we could always use it. With regards to the, our Public Works Committee, as this council is aware, I have made my position very clear about the barrier at the bridge in St. Catharines Bridge. I'm of the belief that $4 million that was to be spent on the barrier would be better allocated on mental health issues throughout the region, not just on one particular location. Should regional council decide on Thursday to move forward with the barrier, it is my recommendation that all 4 levels of government pay for this, not just the region. Waste collection continues to be a problem in the area and throughout the region. Fort Erie is not exempt from this. Again, this waste management was brought up, and staff will now be looking at different ways to move forward. And they've been given guidance. Sort of, let's get on with this, and let's do what we have to do to rectify the problem. I had the opportunity to go to the Niagara Recycling in Niagara Falls on Kent Street. It was quite the experience. Looking at the recycling that you put on your curb each week, where it goes, how it's actually sold to different places throughout the world. I would encourage council, if you have the opportunity, we can arrange a tour the facility. Not only is it dealing with the recycling products, but how they actually give money back into the community with people with adult disabilities. I think it was $2.5 million that has been given back so far across the region. I was appointed as the regional council representative on the Regional Emergency Management Program Committee. The committee is provincially mandated and is to oversee the implementation and operation of the region's emergency management plan. It's my belief that we are in good hands, and compliments to the chief. I'm calling it a community conversation. I will be starting to hold community meetings starting next month. I have tentatively booked Fort Erie Golf Club for the inaugural meeting that is my hope and open to the public, that residents will bring their concerns about regional matters, but also bring suggestions. And I will be doing this throughout the town of Fort Erie, hopefully every other month. I'm finding that every month is will be a bit trying with schedules and everything. So I will be in contact with all the councillors when I will be going into your area. If you want to join me, you're more than welcome to. But not just people coming and sort of giving us heck or whatever. It's there for suggestions. I use that. But to bring suggestions forward. And that's the hope, that I don't profess to know everything that's going on. We'll have ideas or concerns, that we have suggestions to dialogue. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Regional Councillor. And don't forget that on Thursday, we have a notice of motion about the community improvement programs. So I know that I'll be able to count on your support, because you've been supportive all along. That's the motion to ensure that there's no cutoff date for who can apply. There had been an artificial date of March the 1st, 2018 imposed. There's a motion to eliminate that date for the CIPs, the simple CIPs that relate to facade, signage, and the apartments over commercial buildings. Does anyone have any questions of the Regional Council? I'll start with Councillor Butler and then Councillor Dubineau.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Insignia. Just to let you know, I am also planning to be at the Kinsman Club every third Wednesday of every month, starting in May. So maybe you can join me one of those months to address the constituents. But I like your idea. I want to ask you some questions with respect to waste collection. And we have a report that says that there is not enough sufficient time for the region to undertake a study with respect to bringing waste collection in-house. And my question is, how did that get passed so quickly without a consideration?
There was a consideration by regional. Councillor, you're on the Public Works Committee.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That was brought up. What the issue was, in order to look to facilitate the vehicles that would be required through the different contracts that would have to be gone through. The time was shortened for Amterra already. So they were looking at, instead of 2021, it was now back, we're now back into fall 2020. So the time frame that's available right now, there are things that have happened that wouldn't allow that time frame, the time frame to be lengthened. So it was a matter of, well, it had to go that way, and I can't specify, it'll come out, it should come out on Thursday at our regional council meeting with regards to what had transpired and what we have to do. It's basically because we couldn't extend the time frame, and that's really, and the amount of work that had to be done before that time frame. I didn't realize that a lot of these larger waste collection agencies swallowed up the ones that were already there before in the different municipalities. So now, instead of like Fort Erie had one, or Port Colborne or whatever, they were all sort of, now we have one or two conglomerates now that are actually holding the purse strings. And for them to go ahead and move forward, they want it. But I will get back again to you about that, absolutely.
I appreciate that, and that was my whole reasoning behind asking the region to look into bringing it in-house, because they do seem to be conglomerates that are operating in the marketplace. It is a lucrative contract, it really is, and if we can find some cost savings, that to me would be immensely beneficial to the constituents of our area, if not the entire region. So, and you say that they're moving it up, so the RFP would be up for tender when then, do you believe? And the contract switchover would be slated for 2020?
They're trying to get the RFP. They're working on it now to try and get things out as fast as they can. In order to bring it in-house, they looked at the cost of equipment, how many people would have to be hired. If they bring it in-house, then you have to look at the wages comparable from one of these companies as compared to what if you brought it in-house. You're looking at a huge, especially unionized positions and things like that. That's where they're saying to bring it in-house would be fundamentally, it would break the town or break the region for that amount of money that they would have to put out.
Yeah, I can appreciate the disparity in wages, so thank you very much. That's all I have for you.
Just on that point, Councillor Butler, I note that the report did make reference to including a fair wages consideration in the RFP to try to maybe address some of the problems that have arisen over the current contract. Councillor Dubino.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Councillor Incentive, for being here tonight. It's always good to hear from you. Really quickly, I missed the date that the NPCA is going to have the Auditor General presenting. What was that again? I'm sorry?
May 3rd.
May 3rd? I'm assuming that's going to be an in-camera meeting?
No,
Okay,
that is in Balls Falls on May 3rd.
perfect.
It is a regular scheduled meeting for the board.
Okay.
And they will make a presentation, so it's open to the public.
Excellent. I want to thank you for all your work right now that you're doing with the NPCF. I know that that's been a bit of an issue. Congratulations on being chair. And I look forward to seeing that organization, move forward in the way it needs to. conservation is important, and promoting that in the community is very important. So I'd like to see the reputation of that organization repaired. Also, I just want to mention quickly that with respect to what the mayor had just brought up with the CIP cutoff date, the South End Riverwalk core CIP within Ward 2 is one of the CIPs that was affected by the cutoff date. So the other CIP programs that are existing in Fort Erie right now were not affected except for the South End Riverwalk. So I'm very appreciative of your support as well as the mayor's support on getting this rectified and on track. And I look forward to seeing how that goes. So thank you very much.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Reddercop. Through to Mr. Insignia. Mr. Insignia, you and I had a conversation on this before, so it won't come as any surprise. The rationale for the decision to for the Lagoon and Niagara on the Lake to be closed and a new treatment plant to be created, yet Black Creek Lagoon is not going to be closed. They're going to invest $4 million into it. I'm just wondering what the parameters were to decide that Niagara on the Lake gets a new treatment plant and Black Creek gets whatever you want to call it.
Through you, Mayor Reddercop. That's a really good question I'm going to bring to Public Works. The investment was to drain it after how many years, or to dredge it after how many years, and the amount of infrastructure, the amount of homes that have come as of late are going to tax that even more so. This isn't something that I haven't let go yet with Public Works, and it is on my list to ask and to start pushing. And you are absolutely correct. Something needs to be done, whether it's I won't go so far as to say a new plant, but something needs to be done with regards to that. From what I recall, that was only, the lagoon was specified for a certain number of homes. And I think we have now surpassed that. And I'm not sure how they explained it. But I will see Mr. Tripp, and I will see Ms. Habernout, and I will get an answer for you.
One further question,
Sure.
Mayor, through you to Mr. Insignia. The stoplights at Netherby and Sodom, what's the timeline for that?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I do not know that right now. I will make a phone call, and I will find out.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes and Councillor Encina. Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Reddercop, and thank you very much, Regional Chair Encina. That you were talking about some grant funding. Can you give me was that the $90,000 that you were talking about that's
No,
sitting out there?
for you, Mayor Reddercup. The grant program through the foundation is a whole different program.
Okay,
That should be hitting the the foundation's website very shortly. The money that's put aside from the Fort Erie Conservation Women's Auxiliary is actually used as bursaries to students who are going and following the path to environmental. I think bursaries are around $1,500 for those who apply.
and that's what the funding is for?
No,
Just that?
the grant funding is for anyone who, it's for groups. I believe they're doing nonprofit. Don't quote me on this one, residential, and I believe there are 3 groups who can actually apply for a grant if they're doing work on the environment. If there was a group here that was doing environmental work and they wanted to apply the whole process online, you can go through and submit your application.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Can you email the grant funding that's available and the criteria
Absolutely.
that's
I will.
required? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Councillor Encina. That takes us to presentations and delegations. And as I indicated, I'm going to ask Barbara Vanderhayden and Jessica Trapani of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of South Niagara to come forward and return what was missing for a year. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop, councillors, staff, and community members. I'm Barb Vanderhayden, Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and with me is Jessica Trampani, Fundraising and Events Coordinator, and joining me will be Stephen Pissarro, who is Vice President of our Board of Directors. We have the pleasure this evening of attending a council meeting in order to present South Niagara's Tim Hortons Bowl for Kids' Sake Mayor's Challenge Trophy back to the town of Fort Erie for the 5th time with a team total of $1,465. What an accomplishment. We're very proud of you. And shortly, Stephen will be recognizing one councillor in particular for his contribution. A study completed by the Boston Consulting Group states every dollar invested in Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring programs generates a minimum of $18 in social return on investment. According to their study, when it comes to hard dollar returns, few investments equal a donation to Big Brothers Big Sisters. The study also found that over their working lives, the former Littles will earn on average $315,000 more than those in the other controlled group. In 2018, Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara provided programs to over 604 children within our service area, which includes all the Fort Erie communities, through community or site-based one-to-one matches, site-based group, and after-school programming. We began our 2019 year with a wait list of about 150 children, which is due to a combination of lack of funding as well as volunteer shortages. Thank you, Mayor Redekop, for allowing us to move forward in the presentation. Stephen, would you come forward, please?
I'll go this way.
Okay.
Your worship, members of council, it's a pleasure tonight to be here for this presentation, not just for the trophy itself, but also to acknowledge Councillor George Mcdermott and his fundraising efforts. And not just this year, but for successive years. When George and I sat on council for the first year, and I brought forward the Bowl for Kids' Sake, as I had just joined the board for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I told him a little bit about it, and he committed to me that year he was going to raise more money than anybody else in this town, and he came through. The second year, he did the same thing. Third year, fourth year, and this is now the 5th year. It's very difficult when you're out in the community fundraising to find an individual who year after year after year makes those commitments and comes through. Fundraising is a very tough space to operate within, and especially when individuals have something going on in their own lives, to carry through with that commitment, regardless of what's going on at the time, is something very, very special. So, George, on behalf of Big Brothers Big Sisters of South Niagara, thank you not just for this year, but for the past 5 years of your support. It's appreciated by not just the organization, the board, the staff, but most importantly by the little boys and the little girls that take advantage of the services. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We would also like to present at this time to Mayor, Council, and staff of Town of Fort Erie a recognition plaque in appreciation of your continued support over the last few years. Unlocking a child's true potential through mentoring creates a future where anything's possible. Mayor Redekop, would you please come forward and accept the trophy, which I know you've got a spot for.
Well, and I'd like to have the real hero, Councillor Mcdermott, come with me.
Thank you. As well as the appreciation plaque. Do you have your camera with you? I have my cell phone, yes. Okay. Yes. I'll let Stephen. Oh, okay. Which side do you want?
Yeah, this is good. And you can,
Stephen, are you coming?
you can hand that to Councillor. Oh, cool. Oops. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
And just so that it's clear, we didn't win that trophy because of our bowling prowess. We won it because of Councillor McDermott's ability to raise money. Okay.
But you look good while you were born.
Okay, that takes us to, back to the regular agenda, and former Councillor Stephen Passero from the Community Gaming Development Corporation. Good evening.
That's right, because Councillor Passero would have to stay to the end of the meeting.
Don't be rubbing that in.
Just in reference to your remarks earlier, Your Worship, if you were to talk to my first wife, she would tell you that it felt like 79 years. Melissa, I think, is going to bring up a presentation for me. It's good to see everybody. Just advance. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I'm here tonight as the chair of the Community Gaming and Development Corporation, and I'd like to acknowledge our fearless leader, Grace Gress, who's in the audience as well. We look good because of the hard work that she does behind the scenes and in between our meetings. Just wanted to give you a brief update on our activities. Established in 2000, the CGDC was independently to manage all aspects of the gaming function, including the application process, review process, allocations process for revenue, and events and monitoring for compliance. The board is comprised of 8 appointed members of the community, appointed by council, as well as 1 member of council who sits ex officio on the committee. It is incorporated as a separate entity, and we do have to abide by the rules and regulations set out by the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, the terms and conditions set out by the Alcohol and Gaming Corporation of Ontario, and the relationship that exists between the Town of Fort Erie Council and the CGDC is set out in Fort Erie Town Bylaw number 25-2015. And one of those functions is on an annual basis. The board of the CGDC recommends to council permittees for the year to receive a license, and council approves those. Net proceeds to organizations. This is a common question that we get. We do provide our minutes to council for information purposes on a monthly basis, but what you see are the allocations that we have given out on a month-to-month basis. So we thought that it was important, and the board felt that it was important that I be here to kind of give you a cumulative total to put things in a little bit of perspective. So you can see 2015 through 2018, you can see a sharp rise. And there are a couple of things that go into this bar graph that we'd like to point out. First of all, in 2014 is first when the concept of e-gaming was introduced. And it was a challenge for most municipalities to accept because it really was going out on a limb to embrace a new concept, the introduction of technology into gaming establishments where they had not previously existed. And it also meant financially that the municipality took a big hit. So to do the right thing, and I do believe to this day it was the right thing, the municipality did endorse e-gaming. Because the motto at the time was, and should still be, that it should be what's in the best interest of the charities and what will make them the most money versus putting more money into the coffers of the municipality. So 2015 was the first full year of e-gaming. 2016, it was still taking a little while to catch on, but you can see that once it did catch on and new products and services were introduced, 2017 and 2018 were very, very good years in comparison. What's not shown on the bar graph is 2013 and 2014. So prior to e-gaming being introduced, 2013 revenue was 1.05 million and 2014 was just under 1 million. And overall, it really was a decreasing pattern year over year. So the concept of e-gaming has worked. The other item I'd like to point out, we get asked quite often, what do you do when there is an increase in revenue? And it's much easier to make decisions when you have more money coming in than when you see more money decreasing. So what we do is on an annual basis, we estimate based on the previous year and based on forecasts and trends in the marketplace, what we think the overall revenue will be for the upcoming year. We target that and then we work backwards. And what we do is we look at program allocations for our charities. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we have been trying to be much more in touch and responsive to the needs of the organizations. So Grace has one-on-one chats very often with each of our 71 agencies, organizations, and charities to identify what their program needs are, what some of their challenges are, and where some areas are that they could catch up, i.e. some special projects or capital repairs or capital purchases. And in the years prior to 2015, 2016, when revenues are decreasing, it's capital repairs and special projects that do tend to languish because the focus is on core programming and just trying to make ends meet. We'd like to present this pie chart as a very good summary as to where the dollars went for 2018. So of the $1.9 million that the Gaming Corporation received, this is how it was allocated. You can read for yourselves the dollar amounts and the categories. What I would like to do is just give you an example of those categories, just to put into perspective some of the different groups that we have in the community and how we classify them. This is not an exhaustive list, just an example. Advancement of education is our schools and our parents' councils. Community amenities are such organizations like the Black Creek Community Association, Fort Erie La France Association. Environmental would include groups such as Fort Erie Conservation Club and Friends of Fort Erie Creeks. Social services would be Community Outreach Program Erie. Most people know that just simply as COPE or Canadian Mental Health. Service clubs, of course, Fort Erie Lions Club, Kinsman Club, etc. Support services, Fort Erie Meals on Wheels, Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit. And youth would be Boys and Girls Club, Greater Fort Erie Minor Hockey, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. So of the $1.9 million, that is how you see that it is spaced out. And knowing you have a full agenda, a 3-slide PowerPoint.
Great.
Any questions?
Brevity is a great attribute.
It is.
Thanks very much, Councillor Pissarro, ex-Councillor Pissarro. Are there any Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor. Come to you, to Mr. Pissarro. Stephen, has there been any advertisement or any encouragement for other organizations? I know you've mentioned you have 71 agencies, but has there been any work to encourage other services that may also qualify? I know that there's a qualification and criteria to be able to apply, but I'm sure there might be other organizations and groups that would benefit, and I've yet to see anything in the paper to encourage them. I know several years ago, like even before 2014, there was, I don't even think there was 1 million, I think it was about 600,000 to 700,000, and there wasn't enough money to go around, and they were discouraged. New organizations were discouraged from applying, just simply there just wasn't enough money. And so, concentration was done on the existing groups. But is that something your organization is looking for, to encourage other groups and organizations to apply?
So we do, and we do welcome those applications. We have received 5 over the last 6 months. None of those applications have actually come back as completed. Through your worship to Councillor Noyes, as you can appreciate, there is a lengthy application process. As I mentioned in the first slide, there are a number of criteria that we must abide by, and hence each group must abide by. So it's not just any group of people or any organization that can come forward. So we are hopeful that 1 or more of those 5 groups will come back with completed applications. We are slightly hesitant this early in a year to publicly go out and solicit groups, because that would carry the pretense that we do have a lot of money to give away, and we really don't. You see that things are trending upwards. We're going in the right direction, but we're still nowhere near being able to meet all of the demands that the current groups are currently placing on the revenues and the allocations that we have. So the best thing in Fort Erie is word of mouth. right, wrong, or indifference. And usually what we have found is that no one person is usually a member of any one board or agency. So usually word travels very fast that if you're in Fort Erie as an organization, we do have a gaming development corporation, so we do get those applications through that process. And it does travel outside. So a couple of the groups I listed on the second slide, Canadian Mental Health, for instance, is a region-wide, but we also offer gaming money to regional entities if they provide services here in Fort Erie. Another example is Port Holborn Marine Rescue. They're a recipient as well. So we are open to receiving those applications. We're just hesitant to put out something big time, full page, front page, that says we welcome your applications, because we might not be able to make those commitments. But they are coming in through one source or another, and hopefully those groups will come back to us and follow up.
If I can continue, and I can understand your position, but I also understand the position that this is the same thing that I've heard for the last 15 years, is that there's not enough money to go around. We don't want to encourage organizations for exactly the reason you're given. But again, there may be some organizations there that don't know and are still kind of remembering what they were told 10, 15 years ago and are not coming. So I think the more the public knows, the better. And again, there is a lengthy criteria. It takes, if I'm not mistaken, almost a year, but they have to be registered charity or not-for-profit for over a year before they can even apply. And if anybody's thinking of that, any organization is thinking of that, they would have to start now to get something in about a year and a half. So it wouldn't be like they're all rushing at your door. Would you have any comment on that?
Through your worship, you're correct. One of the criteria, one of many criteria, is the organization has to be established as a not-for-profit for 1 year or longer. I would hope that any organization is not establishing themselves as a not-for-profit just for the sole purpose of receiving gaming money, because that would be a red flag to us right off the start. But we will take your comments under advisement, and I will relay those back to the board.
A further question. Sure. In the bylaw, I'm just paraphrasing it. There's, and this goes back to when it was first bylaw done back in, I think, 2000. It commented about that there should be some community public meetings be held. To my knowledge, there has not yet been one public community meeting to be held in regards to bingo funds. To my knowledge, do you know that to be different?
The bylaw that we currently work from is the most recent as 2015. I don't know if that provision is still in there. I would have to get back to you on that. But through your worship, if I can ask the councillor a question, what would the purpose of that meeting be in your eyes? What would we be doing to facilitate that, and what information would you be looking for? I'd be happy to take that information back.
If I can respond, and thank you for that question. It's the way we started the Community Gaming Corporation, is that we had public input to say, okay, we have where would you like the bingo monies spent? You know, in the categories and things like that, and feedback, are we spending it well? Could we spend it better? Those kind of open-ended questions, saying, how are we doing? What could we do better? Do you have any questions about how the money is spent, and any suggestions? So that's what the public meeting would be about, to get feedback from the public, to see kind of like not a litmus test, but a how are we doing type thing, and to get feedback to say what could we be doing differently, what could we be doing better. Particularly, I think it's important at this time because there's been so many changes in regards to the gaming. Everything from the licensing to the, can't even think of all the things. There's like 2 or 3 documents that the government, the province has sent down over the last 5 years that have changed the face of bingo, so to speak, and introducing e-gaming. So I think the public would probably benefit from knowing.
So as I mentioned, Grace does a fantastic job of reaching out to the organizations several times per year to keep tabs on their programs, their needs, their thoughts on the processes, on how the board is doing, where allocations are going to be. I'm not too concerned about what the public thinks. I'm concerned about what the 71 agencies think about how we are doing and what we're doing. To be honest with you, if we were to get 70 plus agencies in a room, Group X doesn't think Group Y needs any more money. Group X wants all the money. I think it'd be a losing proposition from the get-go, but we are very responsive and in touch with the current 71, and hopefully we can push that to 75 or 80 in the years ahead if the dollars allow. But for the purpose of just having a community meeting for the members of the general public to come forward, I'll take that to the board. I personally am not interested, but I'm one individual. I'm more concerned that we are serving the 71 agencies as best as we possibly can.
to you, to Mr. Pissarro. I appreciate your position, but I always think it's very important to know what the public thinks, as opposed to just limiting it to the representatives of the 71 agencies, which are wonderful agencies, don't get me wrong. But the whole premise of the Community Gaming Corporation, and I was on council that time, was to continually get public input in regards to how the allocation should be distributed.
Okay, Councillor Noyes, I don't want this to devolve into a debate. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions. You've asked questions. Mr. Becerra was good enough to ask you a question. You've been able to respond to that, so I don't want this to go any further unless you've got a question.
Last question is, one of the things you, your first page, you introduced how it was set up and things in the year 2000. Is the Community Gaming Corporation still an employee of the town of Fort Erie?
The corporation itself is set up as a separate corporation. We have our own set of bylaws. We have a member of town staff that has been seconded to the corporation to perform those functions. Yeah.
So I can tell you so do you know that it indeed is the fact that the Gaming Corporation is an employee of the town of Fort Erie? That's actually in the bylaw.
The gaming corporation isn't an employee.
It cannot be an employee, no.
It's an arm's length corporation.
Thank you. I'll show it where it is.
That would be helpful. Any other questions of Mr. Becerra? Yeah, question. Thank you very much, Mr. Becerra.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, members of council.
That takes us to somebody who's always welcome, and you found your way back home. Dave Hayworth, I guess a planner now with the region. The one that got away. Good evening.
Good evening. Advances here. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be before our municipal partners, and I see a lot of familiar faces, which is always nice. Doug Giles was intending to be here to present with me, but he's feeling under the weather. I have two colleagues with me, Sean Norman, a senior planner, who will be presenting on the Natural Environment Background Report, and Eric Axe, who's the manager of community planning and is in charge of the natural environment, aggregates, climate change, and agricultural reports that will inform the official plan. Basically, we're developing a new official plan that deals with provincial policy, reflects the priorities of the community and regional council, and, also it takes into consideration our local partners and provides clear direction for our local planning partners with flexibility where appropriate. We want to, where we can, let the local municipalities do their planning. We started initiating the official plan by resource allocation in 2016. 2017, we set up a planning advisory committee, developed an official plan, high-level official plan process framework. We've developed frameworks for the priority background studies with area planners. We've done presentations to local councils. We've had a special meeting of council, and we've just approved in March a consultation timeline framework for the official plan. I think as I've been before this council before, we talked about priority background studies, and you can see the 4 under growth management and the 4 under the natural systems, environment systems. In terms of timelines moving forward, we want to finish up the background studies and options development, draft policies for the key component sections. We want to then develop a draft consolidated regional official plan and then present that for council to for adoption at the end of 2021. During these kind of key stages, we'll have consultation with stakeholder groups, the public, etc. So in terms of priority background studies under growth management, we have the land needs assessment or land budget, which is determining the amount of land needed for residential and employment growth to 2041. And we also have to deal with, obviously, the question of urban boundary expansion requests, which we have quite a few. That's a bit of a changing dynamic. Under the current growth plan, I will say that that all has to be dealt with through the new official plan, the Municipal Comprehensive Review, which is the entire official plan. But with the election, there are proposed changes to the growth plan, which would allow some expansions to, if it gets approved the way it's proposed, proceed in advance of the official plan and comprehensive review. So we're aware of that, and we're waiting to determine what actually transpires in terms of amendments and be proactive in establishing a strategy to deal with that situation should it come about. Basically, the land needs assessment has to be informed by our employment land strategy and the other strategies under the growth plan in order to kind of get a complete picture of everything. One of the other components of the growth management program is urban structure. These are strategic areas to direct growth and intensification, and they're implemented through local secondary plans predominantly. The draft urban structure is to be discussed with area planners prior to public consultations. And I will say, like, what we want to do is direct growth and intensification to areas served by public transit, community facilities, where you want supportive population to support those types of facilities. These also help by identifying areas of intensification to protect established neighborhoods and characters of areas by strategically having intensification in certain areas. The high-level preliminary urban structure components are an urban growth center, which is basically downtown St. Catharines, a regional center or centers, GO Transit station areas, which we've done secondary plans for, strategic growth areas, local centers, and local corridors. In terms of the other component, employment land strategy, we want to identify and protect a sufficient and marketable supply of land for employment uses. We have a consulting firm that has been retained to undertake the study, and the target completion date is the end of 2019, and we'll be working closely with area planners to identify employment areas that should be protected in the regional plan. And we've been back and forth with area planners with mapping to streamline the mapping and identify those areas. The housing strategy, we want to plan for an appropriate range and mix of housing forms, provide choice, affordable options, and aging in place. We want to align with the region's housing and homelessness action plan. We've hired a consulting firm to gather data on housing and affordability targets, and that data has been gathered. We've shared some higher level data with local planning departments, and in the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll be sharing the more detailed local data with the municipalities. And basically what we want to do in the growth plan from a regional perspective is to identify targets and tools to help achieve affordable housing. Under the rural and natural systems, we want to inform for agriculture, we want to inform the identification and protection of our agricultural land and support the agricultural industry as a primary driver. And this is to be initiated in the spring of 2019. Our natural environment, Sean Norman will be speaking to this, but basically we are in the process of developing and finalizing a watershed planning discussion paper, a mapping discussion paper, a natural environment background study. Aggregate resources, basically this was started under Imagine Niagara, and we developed a state of aggregates in the Niagara region. We've completed a technical addendum in spring 2018, and we're in the process of drafting policies to deal with aggregate resources currently. Climate change. Basically want to explore opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our communities and better adapt to the effects of climate change in Niagara, such as flooding. Our target completion date for a climate change discussion paper is fall 2019, and you can see in this illustration all the components of the official plan that will affect climate change. Consultation overview. We had, like I mentioned, the consultation framework endorsed in March of 2019. We've built that on consultations through Imagine Niagara. You can see the themes in the triangle that were identified in 2013-14 by the community. We received over 4,000 surveys and approximately 3,000 comments. And most of those themes and the details in those themes were basically, I would say, solidified or I think basically were clarified and under Shape Niagara as well. So we want to consult on the background studies and the draft policies. We want to hold stakeholder sessions for all the background studies, and we are going to hold a series of public information centers and of course, public meetings as we move further. We're developing our website, and we're going to be releasing videos and promoting the official plan through social media. Public consultation timeline. Basically, the background studies and options development are around by the fall of 2019. And when we have our public information sessions in the fall of 2019, we actually want to have some background and hopefully options development that actually has some substance that the public can consider and provide input to. Want to have draft policies and mapping in the fall of 2020, and then a draft consolidated official plan at the beginning of 2021 for a long-term public review. Well, there'll be an opportunity throughout 2021 for the public and municipalities to comment in on the consolidated draft, and of course there'll be refinements before it's dealt with at council for adoption. So these are the next steps. I think I've mentioned most of these already. And one of the big considerations is, of course, the province is currently reviewing the growth plan, as I mentioned, the Planning Act, and the provincial policy statements that we'll have to take in consideration. But most of the background reports are all basically fundamental good planning, and we would be doing that work in any event. We just may have to go back and look at doing some subtle refinements here and there. The official plan is, we intend to organize under the following themes, and a growing region, a connected region, a competitive region, a vibrant region, and a sustainable region. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayworth. I do have some questions. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
You mentioned that in the spring of 2019, you're going to have a plan to support agriculture. Is there something that you can elaborate with respect to that?
There's a few, there's a variety of things we want to look at. We're actually looking to obtain a consultant currently right now to help streamline what we're going to do in-house and what we're going to deal externally. But we definitely want to incorporate a conformity exercise between what we have now in the official plan and the changes to the provincial documents that have taken place and will take place. I think Eric may want to speak to the agricultural study a little bit. He's more involved in that.
Sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing.
She wants to know the components of the agricultural background study.
So that's through you, Mayor. Good evening. Eric Koch, Niagara Region. We're still in the process. Dave had indicated that background work is going to begin in the spring. Right now, we're dividing between what's going to be required through provincial conformity, so changes that came in the growth plan, the Greenbelt plan, and the Niagara Escarpment plan, and then other things that are more regional issues that we're looking to advance forward. Previously, we did some work on value-added policies in 2009, adding those in. So we're still sifting through what we're going to achieve under the provincial conformity piece, and then what we're going to do as additional work. And then there's sort of a third pillar there that's going to be what sort of becomes afterwards, implementation type work. So we're looking at the potential of being able to move some things out of policy and move them more into a guidance document type process, but that would be work that follows the official plan. So we're very much still in the sorting through information stages and waiting to see what changes come from the province. Last year, there was an agricultural system for the growth plan that was introduced effective February a year ago. There's now been some discussion that that's coming back out temporarily, so we're going to do a little bit of waiting to see what the province gets us and then go from there. So.
Thank you, and Your Worship, if I may have one last question, and it's with respect to gathering the targets and tools to achieve affordable housing within the Niagara region. And when are you going to be starting that project, and when will it be ready for a report for the rest of us to be able to peruse?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butler, I'll take that back. I wouldn't be able to give you a specific date now. We just finished the data and the main analysis part. I would say that once we touch base with the municipalities, get input, further input on that data, that will be one of the next steps, is compiling it into a strategy and then dealing with those tools. And I think there would be some definite meetings, et cetera, with area planners to help scope those tools before we then bring it back into the public realm. But I would think that we want to have a higher level draft strategy and some tools from the perspective of gaining public input by the fall, so that when we go to the public information sessions, that information's there.
Sure. If I may. I've been speaking with a number of developers who are looking to build up in the Niagara region, specifically in the Port Erie area, and they have some concepts with respect to affordable living tiers and implementing that so that it's not just one building that has affordable living, it's a mixed environment of people that can afford higher level of condos and then lower level of condos, but an entry level for those individuals looking to buy a new home, for example, or scale down to a lesser. Is that something that you're going to be taking into consideration and contacting developers for ideas as well?
Through the mayor to Councillor Butler, I think that part of the process would be to gather those suggestions and analyze them and discuss them with area planners, et cetera, to kind of scope them down. So definitely we're open to hearing suggestions on what those tools should be.
Councillor Duveneau.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Hayward, thank you very much for your presentation. This is obviously something that's very important for the future of the region. You had mentioned urban boundary expansions, and I've got a bit of a two-part question. I know you had mentioned that we're looking into possibility of granting some urban boundary expansions prior to the official plan, or at least kind of looking at that. And I know some things I had heard, whether they're true or not, I don't know, about the possibility of the region perhaps reallocating urban boundaries from one municipality to another based on growth. And I'm just wondering, where are we currently looking at urban boundary expansions? And is it possible to set the record straight as to the whole idea of reallocation? Is this something Fort Erie should be concerned about with the moving and the changing of the urban boundaries?
Through the mayor to Councillor Duveneau?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Basically, we've got a fair number of requests. some municipal urban boundary expansion requests and some private, just from landowners. So we've taken all those into consideration and taking a look at those. We've got 2 requests currently going on from other municipalities that are doing all the background work, all the background studies that are required to support an urban boundary expansion. The way it works currently under the growth plan, when we do our land needs assessment and there's not sufficient lands to accommodate the growth projected to 2041, you can look at expanding the boundaries. There are more detailed policies in the current growth plan now where even if there's surplus lands regionally, you can possibly expand boundaries with all the background studies, et cetera, but you would have to de-designate other lands within the region. So part of what the province is doing with the change in government is some of the urban boundary policies are proposed for amendment right now. And they allow a possible consideration, if they went in the way they're proposed, for expansions outside of the new official plan process or municipal comprehensive review. And then there's more details that don't talk about de-designation specifically or anything like that, but a no net gain of land, so that there could be maybe a series of ways that could happen, but we would have to clarify that. There's also policies in there for smaller urban boundary adjustments or expansions of a certain size. So I think the key is to wait to see what comes out in the new growth plan to really get an idea of how it's going to affect the landscape relative to urban expansions.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for that. The reason I asked is because with some of the challenges that Fort Erie has right now with shovel-ready industrial, and employment land, certainly I wouldn't want us to, be in a position where now we're starting to experience, a bit of change going on, and I wouldn't want to see that taken away and be given to someone else further up the goat path, if you will. Which brings me to my second question, which ties into that. Has there been any consideration at all as part of this official plan process to returning almost back to basics? And I remember there used to be a phrase that they called grow south, which was the idea that you want the region to grow on the south end to protect the tender fruit land at the north end of the region from pressures on development, infrastructure, and other things like that. Because once that land is gone, it's gone for good and you're never getting it back, and it's some of the best agricultural land in Canada. So I'm just wondering if that's the direction things are going, or if it's going to continue being, drive down the QEW in Grimsby, right in the middle of that land there, and you can kind of see what's going on there, and for me as an individual, I'm kind of concerned about that, and I'd just like to hear your thoughts.
Hayworth.
Through the mayor to Councillor Dubenel. The land needs assessment will be done according to the methodology that the province puts in place. The growth strategy that you're referring to, the growth south, so just a few years ago, actually just before I actually came to the region presented a growth strategy for adoption, and they looked at 3 different options. One was the current option, right? Then there was the market-driven option, and then there was a strategic growth strategy option. So the strategic growth strategy option was the one recommended. It wasn't completely market-driven. Definitely considered the growth along the QEW corridor, the urban structure components, GO Transit coming in, etc. So a bit of a hybrid type of situation, I guess you could call it. There's nothing I've heard from the long-range planning division about changing that per se. Likely, when we go in with all the provincial changes, and the different factors we have to consider, like the 2016 census, the numbers were a bit higher than anticipated, so that changes the numbers within the strategy that you apply. But the percentage of growth that goes to each municipality. I don't think that that division is looking at changing those currently.
Any other questions? Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Mr. Hayward, you mentioned that you were going to have some, I think you mentioned community workshops or something, and is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Lubert's public information sessions,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, and what would someone have to do to be on the email list, to be notified of when these meetings are going to take place?
They can email makingourmark@niagararegion.ca. They can contact me directly and at my email address, and also I would say in the next 3 weeks, the regional website for the new official plan project will be overhauled and updated and on updated, where we'll then be posting public information center sessions. And my thought process is, as we move closer to the fall and we have those dates and locations ironed out, that we would be contacting the municipalities and letting them know so they could put that on their own websites and advertise that.
Can anybody give their email and be notified through email? Or will they have to stay on top of it through the website?
If they want to be on a notification list, we'll put them on a notification list.
Okay, all right. And I'm just wondering, for Fort Erie, right? And I think this is more, for me anyway, it would be more on the environmental issue. Could you give me a list of the stakeholders that are listed just for Fort Erie? I'd just like to make sure that if there's any that I think that should be stakeholders, that I could notify them.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Luberts, I'll let Mr. Norman address that when he does his presentation on the natural environment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any other members of council that have any questions of Mr. Hayworth? I just had one question. Is there any municipality in Niagara other than Fort Erie that's done an industrial land development strategy?
Yes, I don't know if you'd call it industrial, but employment land strategy. There are other municipalities that have completed employment land strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That takes us then to Sean Norman, who's going to speak about the natural environment background study for the regional OP.
Thank you. So good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Sean Norman. I'm a senior planner in community and long-range planning at the region. I'm here today to provide you a brief overview of the natural environment work program that is being undertaken in support of the new regional official plan, as well as to provide you an overview of some of the key findings and background studies, key findings of the background study that's being completed. Before I go into detail on the scope of work, I would like to briefly present some of the reasons why natural environment planning is such an important component of the new regional official plan. Firstly, natural environment planning supports the identification of areas for growth and development. For example, at a regional level, it helps us identify where new growth areas should be. Secondly, there are a range of provincial requirements that need to be taken into consideration. The third bullet point refers to the important ecosystem level role that natural systems play in our daily lives. As you know, agriculture, tourism, and other industries in Niagara rely on clean water and air for their success. Natural environment planning supports the vitality of these industries by ensuring that there is a healthy natural environment for the long term. Fourthly, there is a link between the natural environment and human health, both physical and mental. Natural environment planning ensures that green spaces required for the well-being of Niagara residents will be available for generations to come. Finally, planning for climate change is a common theme throughout the new official plan and will be addressed as part of each one of our work plans. The definition of natural environment can mean something different to everyone. To ensure that the scope of the work program would be well understood, we attempted to clearly define it as an early step in the project. In scope includes all of the environmental features and environmental systems as generally defined by the province. Some of the identified topics are very extensive. For example, natural heritage features includes woodlands, wetlands, habitat, valley lands, areas of natural and scientific interest, and more. What is being presented on this slide is an overview of the key phases of the work program. The process that is being undertaken is generally the same as would be used for any other planning or scientific study. Information is collected, options are developed and analyzed, and an implementation plan is created for the preferred option. In addition, there are a number of major points of engagement that will be used to inform the technical aspects of the work. As highlighted, we are currently on phase 3 and are striving to inform and educate our stakeholders and partners on some of the key topics and issues related to natural environment planning in the region. At this stage, we have not developed options for evaluation and have yet to prepare draft policies. That work will be done during later phases of the project. The natural environment background study, in addition to discussion papers on mapping and watershed planning, will form the basis of the project moving forward. Their purpose is to ensure that policy development will be informed by science and best available information. The scope of the background study was prepared in consultation with planning staff at each municipality and covers both general topics as well as issues and trends that are specific to Niagara. Some of the key topics will be overviewed in the next few slides. Much of the direction for natural environment planning is provided by the province. Provincial direction starts with the provincial policy statement. The PPS identifies the types of natural features, areas, functions, and systems that must be identified and protected. In some areas of the province, has identified more detailed natural heritage systems and policies. In Niagara, we're responsible for implementing the Provincial Greenbelt Natural Heritage System and the Provincial Growth Plan Natural Heritage System. The Greenbelt NHS has been in place for a number of years and is generally reflected in existing regional policies. The Growth Plan NHS is new and is being implemented in the regional official plan for the first time. Finally, the province provides a number of guidelines and other tools to support municipalities. These include, for example, the Natural Heritage Reference Manual and the Greenbelt Technical Paper. As the primary two land uses in the rural areas of the region, it is critical to develop natural environment and agricultural system policies that are compatible with one another. Provincial direction and existing regional policies are generally clear that natural heritage policies are not intended to restrict agricultural operations. For example, Policy 2.1.9 of the PPS provides specific direction that natural heritage policies of the PPS are not intended to limit the ability of agricultural uses to continue. Further, there are many exemptions in both the Greenbelt and Growth Plan NHS policies related to agricultural buildings and structures. Finally, there is a common misconception that where a buffer is required between new agricultural buildings and natural features, that it must be natural vegetation. In fact, both the Greenbelt Plan and Growth Plan include exemptions that state when the land will continue to be used for agricultural purposes, there is not a requirement for natural self-sustaining vegetation. Buffers in agricultural areas may continue to be planted with crops. Woodlands and other treed areas are often the most publicly valued components of our natural systems. When considering woodlands to be protected through policy, it is significant woodlands which are considered to be key features. It is the responsibility of municipalities to identify and map significant woodlands, which is generally done through a two-step process. First, woodlands are identified and mapped based on defined criteria. Second, criteria are developed and applied to determine the significance of the woodland. Criteria, for example, can include proximity to other natural features and the size of the woodlot. Within the provincial NHSs, provincial policy for the protection of woodlands are to be used. Outside of provincial NHSs, municipalities are responsible for developing policies, which must be in conformance with the PPS. A related tool for the management and protection of trees and woodlands are local and regional tree bylaws. The Municipal Act sets out clear parameters of what may be permitted in a regional bylaw and what may be permitted in a local tree bylaw. Outside of the new official plan, the region has recently initiated a process to update the regional tree and forest conservation bylaw. Following completion of the new official plan, there will be a process to ensure proper alignment between the two tools. Climate change and invasive species are recognized as two of the most significant threats to the natural environment and can often work in conjunction with one another to accelerate the deterioration of our natural areas. With respect to the relationship between the natural environment and climate change, this generally means two things: planning to protect our natural areas from the impact of climate change, and understanding that natural areas are an important tool for mitigation and resilience. For example, natural areas such as floodplains and wetlands can help mitigate the impacts of large storm events by storing stormwater, encouraging infiltration, and releasing it at more reasonable rates. There are many invasive species that are currently creating issues in Niagara, including Phragmites, garlic mustard, and European buckthorn. Emerald ash borer is a well-publicized invasive beetle that is currently devastating ash forests across Niagara. Directly controlling invasive species is difficult through the land use policies of official plans alone, and is typically better addressed through bylaws and other management tools. However, consideration needs to be given to how we classify woodlands and other areas that are in transition as a result of the impact of invasive species. Watersheds are defined as an area that is drained by a river and its tributaries. The PPS requires that watersheds be the ecologically meaningful scale for integrated and long-term planning. Watershed planning provides a framework for the protection of water resources and the management of human and natural resources at a watershed scale. It is not a new concept. However, recent provincial changes have reinforced the need for watershed planning to inform land use planning. The region will now have a lead role in coordinating watershed planning. A high-priority discussion paper is being completed to better inform the updated process, roles, and responsibilities related to watershed planning. In addition to presentations to all the local councils, we are also consulting with the public and other stakeholders. Following this process, we will be reporting back to Regional Council with everything that we have heard. The next steps are to complete this first point of engagement and to finalize the background study and high-priority discussion papers. Based on all the input that we receive, we will begin to develop and evaluate various options for how natural systems and policies in the region will be developed. Thank you for your time.
Excuse me, thank you very much, Mr. Norman, and you're banging on 10 minutes. So I know Councillor Duberts has a question.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop and Mr. Norman. I think you know what my question is. Do you have a list of stakeholders in the Fort Erie area that will be notified of any upcoming meetings regarding their input for these changes with the environment?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. We did have a list of stakeholder groups, both under kind of the agricultural and environmental stakeholder groups. So we did circulate that list to kind of, through our area planners group, it was circulated, and it was circulated to Regional Council as well for them to add and make additions to that. If you have a specifics group that you're thinking of, you could let me know. I could let it be on the list, or I could find a way to kind of get the list to you and you could cross-reference it. Yeah, I'm sure we could make that available to you.
Can you break it down to just Fort Erie? Because I don't need to know if somebody from Wainfleet's included. If I had the list from Fort Erie, for instance, the Burt Miller Nature Club, or the Friends of Fort Erie's Creek.
Yes.
And we have our Waverly Beach ad hoc committee, and I don't know if you're aware of the Niagara Community Coastal Collaborative. That is they've been working with Environment Canada.
Why don't we let Mr. Norman circulate that? If you could send the list of stakeholders to the clerk, then the clerk can circulate that to members of council. We can communicate with you if there are any stakeholders that you've overlooked.
Okay, great. Can do that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other councillors? Councillor Duveneau.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Mr. Norman. I just have one question, and not even sure if you'd be able to answer it at this point in time, but I'm going to ask anyway. For the purposes of the natural environment background study, are cannabis grow operations going to be considered an agricultural use, or are we looking at more of an industrial manufacturing use for this type of operation?
Through you, Your Worship. That cannabis, I know that's a big topic right now, and something's being looked at. That's not something that's within the scope of the natural environment work. I think that's being more addressed through the agricultural work program and some other initiatives that are, I think, starting to shape up at the region.
Any other councillors? Thank you very much, Mr. Norman.
Thank you.
That then takes us to Russell Young, who's been waiting patiently at the back. Good evening, Mr. Young.
Good evening, Mayor Redicott. Thanks for hearing me. Every day I witness bad driving in Fort Erie. Horrible driving. I leave my home, I'm worried about getting killed every day. Anne Marie, when you came to my house campaigning, I said, you got my vote if you can get people to stop. You might remember that. Same with you, Mayor Wayne. When you came to my home to give me a safety check for my medical marijuana grow, I lent you a book, Kill All the Lawyers. You brought the book back while I was pointing at the third stop sign. A person blew through the stop sign. You grabbed your head and you said, holy fork. And I kid you not.
Let me just say that this is a great story. Some of it may be true.
Is there a book, Kill All the Lawyers?
Please
and if you go through what I've gone through, seriously, you're wondering when Shakespearean tragedy is going to happen. So, as it is, I got a call from City Hall from Jennifer Adji telling me I shouldn't have the third stop sign up. My partner and I, who have broken up because of this car accident, we point at the stop sign at our corner. People blow through faster. They either give us the finger or they ignore us. And I took the third stop sign down because I'm in the proceeding of dealing with the crash. I get onto Garrison Road. Now I drive a Versa. The car's got less metal than my wheelbarrow does. Seems 8 out of 10 vehicles are pickup trucks, 4x4s, big vehicles. Big vehicles cause more damage. If people want to drive a big vehicle, transport truck, whatever, if you drive bad, you should pay a bigger fine. Bigger vehicle, bigger damage. And for some reason, anybody who drives a brand new pickup truck, they feel entitled to blast through you. And in Fort Erie, the right lane, which is the slow lane, is a passing lane. I come off of Jewson Road onto Garrison to travel east. I have people pass me at 80 miles an hour, not 80 kilometers, to get onto Sunset. It's absolutely nuts. I've talked to everybody. I've left messages with Sergeant John. And seriously, I've called the cops, reported several people for road rage. Just last week, a guy told me he's going to tear my head off and squirt down my neck. And he did this right in front of the school, right in front of City Hall. And the cop that I contacted said he couldn't get the video. I told him, go to Jack Shaw's. Jack Shaw's, they got video at Petro-Canada. And he said it's private property. They won't be able to have a good angle. Any excuse not to do something. Several years ago, I had to be in Welland twice a week for blood tests. I'll admit, I was speeding down Point Avenue Road at times. Third time I did it, an OPP pulled me over and said he had a complaint. Not kidding. I did break the law, I don't know more. Seriously, when I make a complaint and I get more attitude from the officer that shows up, that's a problem. They got to follow up on these things. The same guy who hit me blew the stop sign 500 times. Not kidding. The trucker in Saskatchewan killed a busload of kids. Those farmers, Christians they forgave the guy because he was remorseful. The guy who hit me, all attitude. And if the trucker would have blew that sign 500 times, do you think those farmers would have been so forgiving for killing their children? Of course not. They'll kill you for stealing an egg out of the hen house. Saskatchewan, it's either you're right or you're wrong. If you blow a stop sign, you are wrong. And I cannot believe that when somebody blows a stop sign so many times with complaints, something can't be done. And when you give a license plate to a person that's giving you road rage, giving you the finger, slamming their brakes on in front of you in a huge vehicle, that you're literally not crapping your pants. I don't know who isn't. Couple solutions. A cop parked every morning. The most dangerous entry point of Fort Erie, besides the Queen E, is Garrison Road. Every regional road's been reduced to 70 kilometers, except Fort Erie. Like, seriously, where the City Canada forgot? It seems like Fort Erie can't get things done. And like in Welland, if you're going into Welland and you're speeding, you're gonna be caught. You get caught. In Fort Erie, I see the same people do it day in and day out. I go to get the paper in the morning and I'm wondering when I'm gonna get killed or I'm gonna witness somebody getting killed. And a recent rash of deaths on Fort Erie's roads would suggest that all these people who are speeding, sooner or later they're gonna hit somebody, they're gonna end up upside down hurting themselves. If they get 4 or 5 tickets, like I did on Point Avenue Road, you'll stop doing that crap. So for the sake of not having a Humboldt in Fort Erie, stop blowing stop signs, stop the road rage, and just because you own a pickup truck, it doesn't mean you own the road. You may think you do, but you don't. And I mean, seriously, when you call a cop, you should get a response. The one time I called a cop, I backed up 40 feet to talk to the guy. He gave me attitude and told me he could give me a ticket. For what? I don't understand that. And the second biggest problem is people being in a rush to get coffee. I couldn't even get around the place today at 10 o'clock. There were so many cars out on the road, it was ridiculous. People beeping horns to get a cup of coffee. If they all smoked weed, they wouldn't act like that. Not kidding. Seriously, 420 just went by. There wasn't a single Marco Muzo. In case you don't know who he is, he's a guy who was drunk and blew a stop sign and killed a family. So seriously, take all the money you're getting to police cannabis and enforce the rules of the road. And I got something here from City Hall, and I got 4 people on it that I'm certain are on the sunshine list. Jennifer Pinnell-Adjie told me to take a stop sign down that I could be fined. You've seen the stop sign. Everybody sees the stop sign. It's been up for 10 years. 3rd stop sign didn't get people to stop. I see Kelly Walsh on here, Tom Cookett, and John Vajasic. To put this letter together, if it took 4 sunshine listers, then the efforts are being focused in the wrong direction. Literally, go after the offenders. Don't get PO'd at me because I'm making complaints about valid issues. It's just ridiculous. And in Buffalo, literally, I got it right here. They got a complaint of a guy. They pulled him over and they busted him for careless driving. When I complain about someone careless driving, I get nowhere. And John knows me. We grew up in a crazy neighborhood. If somebody played that game on me 10 years ago, they would tell me they're going to tear my head off, then it would have been in a different situation. Now, sooner or later, they're going to do something crazy, aggressive drivers, that is, and bad stuff's going to happen. Hey, we got so many people that they think they're American, people are going to pull guns out. People will crash their cars. Road rage can work 2 ways. Seriously, if you did that, what the guy did to me last week, and I would have been driving a Hummer, do you think I would have worried about him slamming the brakes on in front of me? Of course not. It would have been like Monster Mutters. So sooner or later, these people are going to clash. All people who drive trucks aren't going to get along. And it's political suicide to talk about people driving pickup trucks getting a bigger fine because 8 out of 10 of them on the road are pickup trucks right now. So if you want to drive a big truck, pay for all that fuel and you can pay for your tickets. So if I said anything out of line, if I'd said anything impersonal, I'm sorry.
Mr. Young, you mentioned at one point that there were 2 solutions that you had. One was to have police...
Sorry, I forgot. Slow down the traffic sign, the traffic light. Make it go off every 90 seconds. That way, anybody that's coming up to it, they have to slow down or stop. But as you said at last council meeting, you've seen people blow the stoplight in front of the high school. And these idiots think that it's 80 kilometers. They've told me that. People have ripped around me. I pull in beside them at Tim Hortons. I said, you know, you went through a school zone? It's a highway, it's 80. People have no clue. They don't even see the sign. Otherwise, people would stop at the stop sign in front of my home. And I'm in a lawsuit, and I figure I'm going to get killed before I ever settle.
Okay, so that's a little off of dangerous driving. Two things you need to know. Number one, the region is looking at the possibility of installing cameras at stop lights, at traffic signals. And we've offered this intersection with the high school as a potential site. And the second thing is we'll follow up with the police.
That's good, but what are the cameras doing? Because I came in and talked to
Cameras there.
the desk. The cameras don't work?
They're not there yet.
No, there's cameras right in front of City Hall.
Not cameras that are checking those who run red lights, as an example.
No, but a camera still's got video. It would have showed the guy pulling a road rage on me.
Okay.
And the cop said he couldn't get it from City Hall, and City Hall said, just ask.
Mr. Coker, do we have cameras out there?
The guy's name is Reed,
Just
the tech.
Just hold on.
To your worship, we did have cameras on the skate park for a while, and we did have cameras pointing at the school when it was during construction, but they're no longer active.
Right, okay.
No kidding.
We will follow up.
Holy, I get it. Then the people are basically allowed.
No, they're not allowed, but this isn't the only road in Ontario. We will follow up with John, who I presume you mean the staff sergeant at the local detachment?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I tried to leave a message with him to let him know what's going on.
I've made a note of that. We'll follow that up. But before you go, any members of council have any questions of Mr. Young? Thank you very much.
I guess you've all experienced it then. You just wanted to say it yourself and we're waiting for someone else to say it.
No, it's helpful to have someone from the public come out because, as you know, I've raised this issue a few times here. One time during the last council, I brought a yield sign, a stop sign, talked about this. This is a serious issue, and it is going to result in some tragedy at some point.
And as I learned from you, that it doesn't matter how many times a person blows the stop sign, only when they get caught or they hit somebody. Found out the same thing with road rage. Unless he would have hit me or an incident would have happened, then the cops would act on it. Well, funny thing is, when people call road rage in Hamilton, the person gets busted. If there's road rage in other cities than Fort Erie, people get busted for it. You can't act nuts and tell people, like, in the middle of the road, slam your brakes on in front of people and start screaming you're going to beat the crap out of them. That's road rage in its finest. And if I didn't have a stroke last year, believe me, many times I'd consider taking people up on it. If they really want to pull over and duke it out, what are they thinking?
That's fine, Mr.
You should be the person that's getting the road rage perpetrated on you, is the person who should be the most PO'd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young.
Great. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. That takes us to the final delegation, Andy Bath. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody. This is my first time ever speaking here, so forgive me if I kind of stumble a bit. My name's Andrew Bath. I live at 3444 River Trail. I've resided there with my wife for 5 years now. Up until a year ago or so, we thought we had found the perfect neighborhood to grow our family. Then the subdivision started on Black Creek Road, and then the town decided to resurface our road. As I'm employed in the heavy civil construction industry, specifically in road building, I can't help but shake my head as to what the town considers acceptable. When the road work began, I saw a contractor mill off a small amount of the existing surface, then place a small lift of RAP, recycled asphalt product. Most people thought this, but much to everyone's dismay, it was not. My experience tells me that before the RAP was placed, the town should have done a road survey, repaired all the base failures, but I don't believe this has happened, as they're already coming back and reflecting to the surface. I have a concern that the RAP product used was not put in a thick enough lift to bridge the soft spots, or the town did not spec to have an AC rejuvenator mixed with the RAP, thus causing this base course to fail. As far as the actual surface treatment applied, It appears it's already showing signs of puddles and potholes from the previous uncorrected problems. I think I share the same frustration as many other residents with what the town of Fort Erie has done with this road. Not only do I think they wasted money by just putting makeup on the surface, but it is in my belief that they have created a dangerous circumstance. The area of River Trail has a park, a playground, basketball court, and tennis court. Now it's dangerous for kids to ride bicycles, which some have already fallen. Elderly can't walk there with walkers or assistants because of the loose gravel everywhere. Considering the town of Fort Erie has published that surface treatments would only be done in rural areas, it appears they also do this in residentially zoned areas, such as River Trail. I can only hope the town will reconsider removing this loose surface and use hot mix asphalt to surface this road, or at least do not apply a second course of this material, as it is only wasting taxpayers' money and causing yet another summer of dust and damage. I suggest the town make it a priority to sweep up all the loose granular material to try to prevent injury. Now that the weather is improving, people are outside trying to enjoy the neighborhood. If somebody goes down there on a motorcycle, now that they're out on the road, somebody's going to fall and get seriously hurt and potentially putting the town liable. Just putting up signs that say loose gravel are not going to stop it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bath. I understand that you've had some discussion with town staff with respect to the issue.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mr. Reddick. Come to you, Mr. Bath. Mr. Bath, thank you for your patience for the wait. It was
Yeah, no problem.
It was a 2-hour wait. When I go on River Trail, there's a lot of loose stone. And if I go on other tar and chip roads that I have, there doesn't seem to be anywhere near the amount of loose stone. So what would have caused the amount of loose stone that we now see on River Trail?
In my opinion, there could have been numerous problems if it wasn't the proper mix design was built for the road surface, which there should have been a mix design put in. If proper OPSD specs weren't followed, such as between the time the emulsion goes on and the time the chip goes down, there should only be a 30-meter gap in between those two spots. If that was in excess of 30 meters, you don't necessarily get the proper impregnation of the granular into the AC. There's a multitude of different reasons. If the granular wasn't the right scoped granular for it, it could be many different things.
If I can continue.
Sure.
Mr. Bath, if the town then proceeds with the second application, what happens?
It'll be the same problem, only worse. They're going to have the same loose granular washing up everywhere. All the pre-existing problems in the road surface that were never corrected to begin with are just going to reflect through within a year again. So all the potholes will be back again. All the cracking, everything will come back to the top.
If I can continue. Prior to the town doing the tar and chip, how would you rate the road out of 1 to 10, and how would you rate the road now from 1 to 10? 10 being great, 1 being don't go on this road.
It was probably a 5. There was large ponding areas and potholes, mainly around the edges due to poor drainage, but the road surface itself was good. Kids could ride a bicycle, you could pull a kid in a wagon or push a kid on a stroller, you could get around, you could walk to the park and not risk yourself. Now, you can't do any of that.
On a scale of 1 to 10, if it was 5 before...
It was 5 before, it's probably worse now. It's 4 now.
Okay, thank you. Further question. You talked about base failure. I noticed that when I was walking through and I went through a few areas, I saw some mud coming up through some of the areas. Can you describe why that would have happened?
Usually in my experience, when you have clay pumping up to the surface, it means either the road makeup to begin with was not thick enough, so they didn't have the proper makeup, which would normally consist of a granular B, which is a 2-inch type material. And you'll have that in varying thicknesses, whether it be 300 millimeter or 450 millimeter, and then they'll have about 150 millimeter of granular A on top of it, and then your actual driving surface goes on top. But what can happen if you have a soft spot in the ground, say a water main leak has been present at one time, or something has caused a soft spot, then the mud will start pumping up through the road, and you'll get that effect. That's where you'll get potholes, and you'll see the actual asphalt. If you're using real asphalt, you'll get surface cracking. It'll almost look like an alligator's back, and that's usually caused due to base failure.
One further question, if I may.
Sure.
Why should tar and chip not be used on urban roads?
Well, normally tar and chip's used just in agriculture, or not agriculture, but rural areas that don't have a lot of heavy traffic and turning movements. When you have driveways every 50, 60 feet, you have what's called dry steer. So when a car turns into his driveway, he's going at a very reduced speed, if not stopped, and then they turn the wheels. Every time they turn their wheels, it digs that granular out of the AC, and that starts creating potholes and breaks the tar and chip down sooner.
Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Reddick. Mr. Batt, thank you very much. You said that you're involved in the construction industry.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just wondering, when you see this type of road, well, let's just back up a little bit. Normally, when they put a road together, would not the stages that you go through be inspected by an inspection firm?
Well, most of the municipalities I work in, which if none of them are in Niagara, I work in the city, nobody does tar and chip anymore because that's 25-year ago technology, if not older than that. But when we're building a road or doing any kind of road work, there's usually an inspector on site 90% of the time, if not more, and they watch it from every step of the process. One of the jobs I actually just completed last year was resurfacing Burlington Street in Hamilton, and there was a full-time inspector there day and night because we had multiple operations going on, and one of their sole purposes was to mark out base repairs. So
Now you mentioned that when you're looking at this road that didn't have the right aggregate, it didn't have this, it didn't have that. Are those things that would have been inspected by someone if there was an inspector there?
I can't speak to how the town of Fort Erie operates with their inspection staff, but in municipalities that I've worked in, then yes, the inspector would be there and say, "Whoa, guys, we got to fix this problem. Don't carry on. Don't just cover it up and hope for the best." And what that road is showing right now is exactly that circumstance.
Now, again, you talked about the base. I know a little bit about some things, and I'm assuming that without a good base, no different than a poor foundation. Doesn't matter what you do, you're going to continue on with the same problems over and over again, even if we were to asphalt now.
Well, it's like painting your car, but not fixing the rust. You can put the paint on, it's going to be shiny for a little while, but that rust is coming back, and it's coming back worse than it was before. So if they do nothing at all right now, it will get worse over time, but you're not going to waste any more money. If you put another layer on top of it, it's going to get worse over time, and you've just wasted that money. You're putting paint over top of rust.
Now, there was some talk about maybe the wrong stone was used, and I'm going to the term they used, it was wash stone. Maybe it wasn't wash stone. And so even if they put the ash or the tar down and they exceeded their 30 minutes, even if it was, or 30
meters.
rather, even if it was wash stone, it still wouldn't work, right?
Well, I can't speak to what the contractor did. I wasn't there. I didn't witness what they did. I'm not privy to what specifications they have to work under because I don't have the town of Fort Erie contract with them, but I do know what the OPSD specs are.
Yeah.
And the OPSD specs say 30 meters between the emulsion application and the chip application. But no matter what material you put on top of it, if there's a base failure there, if you're not putting something to bridge that failure, it's going to just reflect back through again. That's where if you put down 30 or 40 or even 50 millimeters of wrap, if it doesn't have a rejuvenator in it, you're not going to bridge that soft spot. Typical application for a wrap product with rejuvenator is 75 millimeter, is what I typically do.
Yeah.
So to go with that small of a lift, which I believe they're around 40 mils just from what I've seen driving home from work, it's not enough to do anything, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, now just based on your experience with laying the emulsion, I'm assuming that's the tar.
Yep.
All right. Let's say we went through the proper 30-meter procedure, but if it was unwashed stone, you'd end up with the same
Yeah,
product that
well,
you have today?
It
Is that
all
possible?
it all depends on what their mix design criteria was. For every job, whether it be a hot mix asphalt job or a tar and chip surface treatment, double application, single application, doesn't matter. There should be a mix design that should have been designed by a professional engineer in Ontario and submitted to the owner, which is the town of Fort Erie, before the process started. Now, if that mix design called for a certain index of AC to be used with polymers or whatever, that's what should have been used and it should show up in the sample results. It should specify the aggregate, the type and sieve analysis of how big the aggregate should be, the source of it, and whether it was washed, unwashed, what type of aggregate, all the information about it. That's what should be applied. And if there was something that differed from the OPSD specs or what the town has specified in their contract, then it should all show up and there should be no issues.
But I think my question is if they did use, let's say, the right emulsion, and then they put the stone on top, if that was unwashed stone, would that create some of the conditions that we have with all this loose stone?
Well,
To me, it seems like.
it only
nothing's
depends on
sticking.
what their mix design says. Normal, I've never seen a mix design for tar and chip that says you can use unwashed stone, so I would say that that would cause it to fail. Or improper application of the stone, that would cause it to fail. There's a multitude of things. Not knowing the specifications, I can't comment on what the contractor did. I'm not an inspector for the town to say what they did or didn't do or what process they did. I can only say on what I see, and I see base failure and I see that money was wasted and they've created a liability. Someone is going to get hurt on that road.
So you would feel that if we did some core samples, we would see the base failure, or?
Well, cores would give you an idea of what the makeup was. You could go out there and physically look to someone that knows asphalt or knows roads and look at some of the areas and you'll see where the base failures are reflecting through.
Okay, all right. Base failure would be poor base.
Yeah, where you'll see cracking, you'll see settlements in the actual spots, which on a rainy day, you'll see the ponding water. You should never have ponding water in the crown of a road.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing that, then there's an issue there.
All right, okay, I get you. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Are there any other members of council have any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Bath.
Thank you.
Appreciate your assistance. That takes us then to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? There being none, then I will ask Councillor Noyes to proceed with the resolution regarding the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenel that the council approves consent agenda items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubenel.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just with regard to the correspondence we received, item K, regarding the waste collection contract, I just want to express, I understand the reasons why Councillor Encina had mentioned earlier that they weren't going to an in-house or at least investigating it. But I just want to express my disappointment in that. I think for the purpose of transparency and allowing taxpayers to get a full, a full review of all the options and what they would cost, that even if it was a number that was unrealistic, I still would have liked that to be presented in the interest of transparency. And the second point briefly is with regard to item L, the correspondence from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. I am pleased to see that they are considering the motion that or the resolution that we sent them. However, with the recent announcement of cuts to the flood mitigation programs at conservation authorities, I'm concerned that this more than likely will be made up by the levy here locally. So good in one respect, but concerning in another. Thank you.
Yeah, just in connection with the waste thing, the biggest issue happened to be the timing. And so, I mean, realistically, they couldn't continue to go on with the situation as it exists. So they're trying to accelerate the end of that contract. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. I've got an inquiry about F, about the Fort Erie SPCA. Now, in their minutes, they talk about the OSPCA no longer doing law enforcement. I just wonder, does this affect us here in Fort Erie at all?
Cookett, would you know? Mr. Brady.
Through you to the councillor, in the past, we have hired the SPCA to deal with those issues. And if if they believe it's no longer possible by the decisions of the courts, then it will be up to the police officers to have to pick up the slack.
Well, do we have any indication right now that there's going to be any concern expressed by the SPCA? Mr. Brady?
I've not seen any concern expressed by them.
Councillor Lubberts is our representative. Has there been any discussion about that?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Yes, there's some issues with the SPCA and their enforcement of some of the laws. And there has been, it's been brought up that the SPCA was not qualified to do what they were doing. And it was brought up by law enforcement. And so there's some changes being made and some decisions that have to be made. SPCA is still working on that. And so they're doing and basically enforcing what they can enforce. And there's some issues going on through the province with Ontario SPCA. So Ontario SPCA will notify the Fort Erie SPCA as to how the outcome of that's all going to be.
So there'll be more information
There
forthcoming?
will be more. I get more information from our general manager there, and I'll contact council.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you for that explanation. I have another question on, or comment on K, which is the Niagara Region Managed Competition and Fair Wage Consideration for Waste Collection Contract. I'm glad to see that they are putting into the contract that there has to be a living wage. I think that we have, we ourselves find it a challenge with affordable housing and things like that. And when the wages are so low and people can't afford to live, expending more than 30% of their wages towards housing, we have a problem. So I'm glad to see that. I know obviously the cost will probably increase, but I think a fair living wage is something we should always consider.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jansen, I noticed that in the Bridgeburg BIA, there was a reference to the banking, and I know that that's been a topic of discussion that you've had with the Bridgeburg BIA. What's the status of them being able to take over their own banking?
We have met with some of their board, and we will be coming up with a plan to move forward with the transition sometime this summer, July 1st, ideally. We'll have our auditors on site in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be working with them to come up with what their needs are for a transition of all their financial services. So that's something we'll be coordinating with them.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments with respect to the items in the consent agenda, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to new business, and Councillor Mcdermott, you have the first resolution under new business. Before I get there, though, I just wanted to refer to the first item, which is the memo from Mr. Walsh regarding the photo radar, and I want to thank Mr. Walsh for following up on that. I wonder if you might have a further discussion with the local staff sergeant with respect to the enforcement of speeding, particularly near the high school.
For Mr. Mayor, for council's consumption, we get traffic complaints regarding enforcement issues nearly every day, whether it's speeding or stop signs, etc. Those complaints are immediately passed through to the police for their follow-up as appropriate. We certainly know that the force is limited in its numbers in Fort Erie. It can't be everywhere all the time. So non-compliance will occur. But I trust that they know their hot spots and they do the work that they can.
Thank you. Perhaps you could alert the staff sergeant to the delegation we had this evening.
I certainly will.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us then to Councillor Mcdermott and the resolution regarding Doctor's Day.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko. Whereas May 1st is Doctor's Day in Ontario, and whereas the physicians in the town of Port Erie work tirelessly to ensure the patient experience is person-centered with exemplary care being given to all, and whereas many of our physicians work outside of their family practice, whether it is staffing our urgent care clinic, our long-term care homes, our retirement homes, our palliative care unit, acting as coroner oversight for the NP program, hospitalist care, and teaching the next generation of physicians. And whereas as a small town, we are one of a few that still has specialist service provision that includes ophthalmology, respirology, internal medicine, cardiology, and many more clinics that operate out of Douglas Memorial Hospital and our primary care sites. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Council, on behalf of all the citizens of the town of Port Erie, expresses appreciation and gratitude to all physicians in the town of Port Erie for their service, dedication, and commitment to patient care in our community.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the resolution? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Takes us to the next resolution, which deals with affordable housing. That's Affordable Housing Committee. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that Council appoints Brian Hodge, Ridgewood Lions Manor representative to the Affordable Housing Committee for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor Dubineau, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes. Council appoints Susan Fike, Fort Erie Native Friendship Center representative, and Kathleen Moses as alternate to the Community Healthcare Services Committee for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. And Councillor Butler, you have the next resolution.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that Council accepts the resignation of Sherry Harper from the Ridgeway Business Improvement Area Board of Management, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the bylaw.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. Councillor Butler, I'm going to stick with you.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that Council appoints Don Irvine to the Ridgeway Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. And that then takes us to, Yep. Inquiries or new business. Councillor Butler and then Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few things that I need to bring up today, and one in particular is with respect to the dumping that's going on throughout the town, but in particular to Prospect Point Road North in front of St. Luke's Church off of Elm Street. And it seems to be an ongoing problem with residents just dumping their garbage and thinking that it's just a dumping spot. So I'm wondering if Mr. Walsh could look into that and perhaps look at putting a no dumping sign there.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that, Mr. Mayor. We'll look into the location specifically of a no dumping sign. I know there's a large vacant area there. We'll pass it on to the region as well. They have an anti-dumping bylaw committee. They can try and chase the people down.
Right, that would be excellent.
That would be, thank you.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you. And I'm wondering if we could take a look at wheelchair accessible parking spots on Ridge Road, because there are a few people that are getting upset that they're not able to park on the road, as most of the parking lots, well, all of the parking lots are not designated. So if we could look at that as well. And then my last...
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Would it make more sense for us to be designating some parking spots in the parking lot by the trail, and maybe if there's another lot because I don't think the road's wide enough. Well, how about if we take that up with the traffic coordinating committee? When does that next meet, Mr. Walsh?
Not for a couple of months, but it's certainly something that TCC should look into.
I agree. Is that satisfactory? Okay.
Then for my final one, if we could re-examine having a four-way stop put into the intersection of Burley and Nye Road. And I know that I had asked for this a few years ago and it was denied, but I'm hoping that you can take another look at it.
And again, that should go to the traffic coordinating committee. Mr. Walsh, you can put that on the agenda?
Can.
Satisfactory? Okay. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I have one inquiry and also a clarification. We had a delegation here about Community Gaming Development Corporation, and I commented that the Community Gaming Corporation is an employee of the corporation of the town of Fort Erie, and I just wanted some clarification. So I did go to the website, and on page 7, 3.0, that's basically how it explains it. Corporation means that Community Gaming Development Corporation of Fort Erie, which is an employee of the corporation of the town of Fort Erie. So either we need to change that definition.
That needs to be changed. It's definitely not an employee.
Okay. Well, it's there. And the other thing on page 11 of the same policy, 6.2, under priority areas, and again, it says priorities shall be reviewed and updated from time to time through community consultation, and that's part of our policy. And we are now talking about $2 million approximately per year. And when this policy was first established, I was on council. I think the mayor was also. And I think we need to encourage that part of the policy be enforced. I think that everyone would be pleasantly surprised at the amount of input that they will get. And I think 90% of it will be very positive. And I don't want to direct the Community Gaming Corporation, but I would strongly encourage them to look at the policy and perhaps, host a community consultation process, which is what the policy directs them to do. So I'll leave that with that. And the other question I have, and I have had a chance to talk to Mr. Jansen a while ago, and I don't know if I'm for it, against it. I'm just throwing it out there because somebody asked me the question. They said, why is waste management, which is garbage pickup, tied to the assessed value of the home as opposed to, like it's a uniform service, as opposed to, okay, you get garbage pickup, you pay $400 and everybody gets one bag and everybody gets this. Since it's a uniform service that we're providing to every house, why is it tied to the assessment value? So someone who lives in $1 million house pays much more than someone who lives in a $200,000 house because it's tied to the assessed value. I know we have to pay the bill, and I know that we do for water and sewer rates. We don't tie it to the assessed value. I know many years ago we did, and the province said you can't do that anymore. I'm just wondering is there an option for us to do that, or to at least look into it to see what it would do? Because I really didn't have an answer for the individual saying I'm only allowed one bag. So why is it attached to my assessed value of my property?
So this has been raised in the past, and I know that there's been a response to it. Water and wastewater, that's a user pay system. That's a rate system. Everything else is levy based. And so the comment that you made about, so many bags of garbage, whatever, it's the same with any service that we receive in the municipality. It's all levy based. It's based on your assessed value. It doesn't matter whether you live in $1 million home or a $100,000 home. You're paying the same towards the roads, and you may not use the roads anymore or what have you. Mr. Jansen, did you look into the response from the region with respect to this? And if not, perhaps you could get a direct response for Councillor Noy's question relative to the issue of waste management.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Noyes, we have reached out to the region. I for response. They do allow flexibility for the municipalities to bill in a different manner if they so choose. There is one exception in all of Niagara, and I believe that's just Niagara and the Lake that chooses a different methodology. But I would agree with the mayor's comments in terms of the assessment system, although it's not a perfect system, is the way that we do assign our municipal costs to taxpayers. So certainly we can look further into that and get back to you with some more information.
Councillor Noyes?
I would appreciate that. Again, I don't know if I'm for it or against it. I just, when someone asked me that question, I was saying, that's a good question. Why is it tied to the assessed value of the house when you get one bag of garbage like everybody else?
Any other, Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on the gaming corporation being an employee of the town, if I remember correctly, years ago, looking at all of that, now things could have changed by now because I know AGCO and OLG, they've changed who has jurisdiction. So there may have been some changes made, but it seems to me that in order for us to have the Community Gaming Corporation, it said something about, I don't know if it was in our policy or if it was from AGCO, that the town had to have an employee that represented the gaming. And I think that's why you see in our policy that the Gaming Corporation is an employee of the town of Fort Erie, so that we have an employee. So I could be wrong, but I think we should look into that and don't just dismiss the fact that we have an employee, because if we don't have the employee, then maybe we are in violation of AGCO rules or OLG rules. So I think we should look into that a little further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cookett, I'll leave that in your hands.
Yes, I'll have Mr. Lustig review it and provide comment.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Just had a couple of questions. First, there was a reference in, I think, the EAC minutes about the town being asked to revive its tree bylaw, or at least start to enforce it. Is that Mr. Walsh or is that Mr. Brady? Mr. Brady, what's the status of the town's tree bylaw? Dormant?
I believe it's currently dormant.
All right, and what would it take for that dormant bylaw to be revived?
Council could direct staff to take a look at the tree bylaw and bring a report back, and the steps that would be necessary to bring it back into effect could be outlined at that time.
Are you aware of whether the region is reviewing its tree bylaw right now? I believe they are they not?
I sit on the Natural Heritage Committee. It's been suggested on a number of occasions that they should review their regional tree bylaw, but they've not indicated to any of us that they are.
Mr. Encina, do you have any information on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have been in contact several times with the arborist at the NPCA, and through there I have a guideline with regards to what municipalities have authority to do, and I will forward that off.
Okay, that will be fine. Yeah, and perhaps you could forward that to the clerk, and then the clerk can circulate that, and then we can determine whether we need to do anything for the tree bylaw. Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just hearing comments from Mr. Brady, that I'm a little concerned about the fact that our tree bylaw is gone. Because if you look at the region, or I guess it's the region's tree bylaw, and they have designated that bylaw to NPCA. And NPCA's bylaw, it states that anything over a hectare is under the NPCA, the Niagara Region's tree bylaw. And anything below a hectare, and there's certain municipalities that they have the jurisdiction of the trees bylaw and their woodlots. So if we don't have a tree bylaw, I'm very concerned about that, and especially when it comes to what happened on Thunder Bay Road with a woodlot that was down there, and we completely destroyed it. And if we don't have a tree bylaw, then we should allow the region's tree bylaw to have jurisdiction over all our trees. But right now, under a hectare, we're on our own, and we don't have a bylaw. Doesn't make sense.
Mr. Brady, my understanding is that the regional bylaw does apply to Fort Erie based on the terms of the bylaw.
You're correct.
And the municipality has a bylaw, but it's not currently being utilized.
That's correct.
Councillor Luberts?
Well, I thought I heard Mr. Brady say we don't have a bylaw.
We have
The
a
town
dormant-
has its own tree bylaw. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, which isn't being enforced and hasn't been for a number of years.
Well, didn't we use it with Thunder Bay Road?
No.
Well, what did we use?
Well,
What criteria did we use?
I presume it was the NPCA was involved in looking into that, and they provided information, and then our town staff required a tree cutting plan to be prepared and provided to the municipality.
No, the gentleman from the Upper Canada Consultant said that he spoke with NPCA, and their arborist told him that the tree bylaw doesn't apply because they were dead trees. And so he said, then I guess that everything went to the municipality, and then we sat here as a council and put together resolutions that they were supposed to follow in order to remove those trees, which I should say, they didn't follow those resolutions.
All right. Mr. Brady, you wanted to comment?
There's a couple points that I'd like to make sure that it's understood by council. The NPCA correctly identified that the regional tree bylaw does not apply to dead trees, period. So there is no regional tree bylaw that applies to dead trees. I haven't looked at ours for in all the time that I've been here because it hasn't been utilized, but I will take a look at it and advise accordingly. Councillor Luberts is quite correct. The path that was chosen in terms of dealing with that woodlot was established by council. Council established that there would be a tree study done and that there would be certain things enacted, and those were directed to the developer. It's my understanding that they did follow those directions of council, and it's on that basis that that woodlot was had the dead trees removed from it.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Luberts? Okay. Any other inquiries or new business? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redcup. Just based on the inquiries from Councillor Luberts, what is the benefit of having a bylaw that we're not utilizing? Is there a reason? Is it complaint driven and no one's bringing it up? If my memory serves me well, and sometimes it doesn't, I think I was on council when the tree bylaw was, and you could cut down so many trees without permission, but you couldn't cut down X, but you couldn't cut down Y. You couldn't cut down a tree that was so big or so old or something like that. I'm just wondering whether we should perhaps have look at the tree bylaw to see if it's relevant anymore, and if it isn't, get rid of it or improve it.
Mr. Brady, do you recall or can you provide us with advice as to why the town's bylaw is not being actively enforced?
From my knowledge, it was not being enforced because the region was given the ability to do it. However, I think it might assist if I'm directed to do the following. To prepare a memo to council with attached to it the local tree bylaw, and in that memo I'll provide the status of it at the present time.
Okay. You'll prepare that memo?
Thank you for that direct.
Well, I think it's helpful.
Absolutely.
It's a topic that needs to be dealt with. I had one other question, and that had to do with the delegation by Mr. Hayworth. And he mentioned that some municipalities are doing some groundwork with respect to a potential expansion of the urban boundary. I'm wondering whether we should be taking some further steps in view of the fact that we've identified potential land outside the urban boundary that could be designated as industrial. Mr. Brady, any thoughts on that?
Yes. We have done, as you're well aware, the strategy that was prepared by the EDTC, and it clearly identified an area for employment lands expansion that was endorsed by both planning staff and by town council, and that was sent to the region, and it was and clearly that is one of the areas that the region is considering for expansion. I was a bit taken back by Mr. Hayworth's comments that there are one or more municipalities undertaking studies. So what I would propose is I'm going to write to Mr. Hayworth tomorrow and ask him to give us, based on the comments that he made, to give us an understanding of what municipalities are that he mentioned and what they're actually doing, and I'll bring that back to council.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Brady. Any other inquiries or new business? If not, there are no motions. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. The council requests that, excuse me, the council requests that the region of Niagara find a solution to the lack of taxi service after hours in the town of Fort Erie, including accessible taxi cabs, and the licensing of said cabs be investigated as to the number, owner, and operator, and that information be made public.
Okay, and that's to be returnable at the next regular council meeting,
Yes.
which would be May the 20th, 21st? May 21st. Any other notices of motion? Councillor Noyes?
I'm wondering, just a notice of motion, I guess, the council review the timeline for registering as a delegation, considering the change in the council schedule.
And again, for the May 21st meeting?
Yes.
Any others? Madam Clerk, I have two notices. The first, that the proposed study of the Gorham Road, Ridgeway Road corridor between Highway 3 and the Millington Skyway, planned for 2020, be accelerated to 2019, and that staff provide council with a recommendation for the source of funding for same. Second, and that would be for the May 21st meeting. The second, that staff report to council on the advisability of Fort Erie applying for bee city status, that's bees as in pollinators, and recommending policies that would encourage positive pollinator practices by the town and local institution, organizations, and residents. And again, that would be returnable May 21st. That then takes us to a report. Councillor Zanko, you have the resolution for report IS.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mcdermott, that report number IS 13-2019, request for amendment to the 2019 capital budget to supplement the 2019 road resurfacing program. That council approves the amendment to the 2019 capital budget to supplement the 2019 road resurfacing program by $1,126,754 with funding of $954,254 from the federal gas tax reserve and $172,500 from the Ontario Municipal Modernization Grant.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to that report? Councillor Noyes.
I'm just through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Walsh. I noticed that there's a number of roads that are listed on which ones are going to get what and things like that. Now, is that etched in concrete? No pun intended. Or can that change? Because I know that we don't yet have the, I know it's going to go out to tender, so it's going to come back to us. Is there still a chance to change that at some point?
Mr. Walsh, I'm not really anxious to have every councillor putting forth their favorite road, but Mr. Walsh, please answer the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly we can change the list. The list is developed through our road resurfacing program. These are roads that need attention now. There are other roads in town that need attention now. We felt the roads that we're putting forward here are somewhat of a combination that put in $1 now to save $10 tomorrow, and also roads that are just at the bottom of the heap right now, and for all intents and purposes are practically undrivable due to their condition. So we're putting in some of the worst and some roads that be optimized right now. So my preference is not to change the list, but we work to council's wishes.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubineau?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just want a quick comment that I'm very pleased to see that we have this funds available. Just based on my short period of time here, it looks as roughly would set us ahead a year, and I think that's fantastic. So the next time I'm at the Y and someone says to me that we never pave the roads, I'll be sure to cite this and say that not only do we pave the roads, we're actually doing extra. So I'm very happy to see this.
I should point out that I have no doubt that in Niagara, we are the municipality that's probably spending more money on road resurfacing in 2019 than any municipality with the exception of the region. Because we're now talking almost $2.5 million. And earlier today, Mr. Cookett and I met with MPP Sam Oosterhoff to talk about the governance review, and we put together a slide presentation. Bev Braden put it together. And it talks about where we are, and I'll circulate that to all of you, but it talks about where we are in terms of how much money we're allocating to infrastructure renewal and where we are in terms of the infrastructure gap. That is the amount of money that we need to maintain our asset management plan. And we're getting very close. We're at the funding level necessary for some categories. We're getting very close on other categories. So within the next 2 or 3 years, we probably will be at the point we need to be. So I'll make sure that we circulate that so that all of you have the benefit of that. I should also point out that this additional work is going to be put out to tender because it's $1 million+ dollars. So there'll be some hopefully competitive bidding, and perhaps we'll be able to expand this list. If there are no other questions or comments, then I will ask the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to bylaws. And bylaws 56 and 58 need to be dealt with separately. So Councillor Noyes, if you could bear that in mind when you're going through the first resolution for first and second reading.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Butler that the bylaw package containing 53/2019 to amend traffic bylaw number 2089 parking, 54/2019 to amend bylaw number 84/2014 to establish a system for administrative penalties respecting the stopping, standing, and parking of vehicles within the town of Fort Erie, bylaw number 55/2019 to amend bylaw number 11903 to regulate the use of parks and beaches in the town of Fort Erie, general regulations and prohibitions. Bylaw number 57/2019 to deem a certain registered plan of subdivision not to be a registered plan of subdivision 2495365 Ontario Incorporated, F. Ping, 0 Catherine Street. Bylaw number 59/2019 to amend fees and charges bylaw number 40-09 as amended Bay Beach parking and admission fees. Bylaw number 60/2019 to authorize the sale of lot 580, Plan 480, Birdie, 0 Richmond Avenue to Ryan Bellafield and Karen Bellafield, probably. Bylaw number 61/2019 to authorize the acquisition of lots 22 and 23, Plan 459, Bertie, from Jean Meisner for parkland purposes.
Continue on, there's a page 2.
Okay. It's late. Bylaw number 62/2019 to designate 848 Garrison Road as being an architectural and historical value of interest. Bylaw number 63/2019 to amend bylaw number 2-2019 to appoint persons to various boards and committees, Fort Erie Public Library Board. And bylaw number 64/2019 to authorize the entry into a strategic alliance agreement with Fort Erie Native Friendship Center is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Reddecup. It's going to be hard trying to find all these. The bylaw in regards to the parking on, in Bay Beach area, the Crystal Beach area, I don't know what page.
53.
53. Anyway, I'm trying to find it. Okay, where? Is it a page number? Anyway, the question is that you have some rates there, and they seem to end at 6 o'clock on one of them, and it says $4 an hour. I know.
Yeah, so it'd be 54.
54?
Bylaw 54.
And I'm just wondering,
No. No, it's not that bylaw.
yeah, there's about three that, maybe it's the one above that, 53. Anyway, it talks about, you have the graph there, or the slide there. It's the one that's parking at the Bay Beach where we're charging so much per hour, $10 a day. But it has $4.
59. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's probably it. Sorry about this, but this is a big package. I'm trying to remember all the pages. Okay, so on page 3 of 4 on that, you have municipal parking. You have midnight to 9 a.m., $4 fee per hour, and a flat fee from May 1st to 3rd. So we're charging $4 an hour from midnight to 9 a.m. And then we're going to be charging from 5 p.m. to midnight $4 again, but there's no flat fee. So in other words, if somebody parks their car overnight, they're going to be paying about $40.
Well, it would be 9 hours to 9 a.m. That'd be $36. But your question is,
Well,
why isn't there a flat fee?
Well, yeah, because during the time of day on street parking and that, you have a flat fee of $10 per day. If you go down to the next, I think it's $10 if you're going to park during the peak time. But then from 6 p.m. to midnight, you have, we don't have anything on this one though. So there's no charge for that, but there is charges for $4 per hour on the above one.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, there's some, is that what the intent is for $4 an hour after 6 p.m.?
These are in the, okay, these are in the municipal parking. The top one is in the municipal parking lot. Is that correct, Mr. Walsh? And the bottom one is on the street. And so your question is, why would there be a $4 hour charge with no flat fee for those two categories?
Yes, that's one, and why in one there is a fee and the other one there isn't.
Right. So, Mr. Walsh, any assistance you can provide?
For the, for parking in the municipal lots, our thoughts were that people would only be there for a couple of hours. And we, to this point in time, we've this is the same structure that we've always had.
Could we not provide an option of a flat fee?
To Councillor Noyes' point, yeah, I see that if you're there for for 4 hours or more, which is entirely possible, if you're there from 5 p.m. till midnight, you can certainly rack up more on hourly fees. So if council wishes, I think an appropriate fee would be $15 in each of the two not applicable spots.
Councillor Noyes, did you want to move that amendment?
Yes, I will move that, and to me that just makes sense.
Okay, so is there a seconder for that? Councillor Butler? Are there any questions then? So the change would be that there would be a flat fee inserted under the municipal parking lot fees to $15, so that whole column would be $15. There are no questions. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That is carried. Any other questions with respect to the bylaws in the package? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Verticop. I'm just wondering, I know we went over this, but if we're not going to be charging to get on the beach in the evening, then why is it that we're going to be charging for parking? Now, I don't know that I've ever paid for parking down at Waterfront Park in the evening. You go down there with your vehicle and you launch your boat and you pay. If you don't launch a boat, you don't pay. But obviously now we're paying. And we never had any trouble with any problems with parking. And now, after 5 or whatever, we're not going to be charging to get on the beach. And I don't know that why we would even charge somebody to park in the evening to go down to the beach. I mean, I've been down there. There's not that many people that go there in the evening, and if they're there an hour, maybe so. But I don't see any overnight parking. And I mean, if we have that problem with overnight parking, then, you know, we can deal with that. But I think what the people brought forward is they wanted to see some kind of revenue from parking during the day when it was busy and the beachgoers, right, and the out-of-towners coming into town. But to me, this is nickel and dime and everybody now. So to be honest with you, I think that we should have parking when we're charging to get on the beach. If you're not charging to get on the beach, then you don't charge for parking either. And I'd like to make the motion that we remove the parking fees from 5 till midnight and midnight till 9 a.m.
So you've got a bit of a predicament. I think we have a bit of a predicament in that we just passed an amendment. Madam Clerk, can you help me? We've just passed an amendment to provide for a flat fee for parking between midnight and 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and midnight in the municipal parking lot. Councillor Luberts now wants to move that we eliminate fees altogether during those hours. And we've just passed an amendment to provide for a flat fee.
There's another part to that too, Your Worship. They would also have to carry the bylaw as amended, which they haven't done yet.
All right.
They've carried the amendment.
So we're still in a
You could do a
phase.
friendly amendment to that one, or move to amend. You can always amend an amendment.
We've already voted on it, but that's fine.
True.
So we're still in the process of dealing with this bylaw, and we're bouncing around with amendments. Okay, so your motion is to eliminate fees altogether in the municipal parking lot between midnight and 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and midnight. Is that correct?
Yes, and we'll just have a flat fee for the from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we leave the waterfront parking the way it is.
Well,
Because it looks to me like what we're going to be doing is changing that parking lot as well at $4 an hour.
Well, I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, okay, if it's just a Bay Beach,
Okay.
then
So you need a seconder. Is there a seconder for your motion? Councillor Noyes? Okay. So that's on the floor. So I know one of the things that we received was from someone suggesting that if we wanted to get people to park in the municipal parking lot and not on the streets, we should charge more for people to park on the streets than in the municipal lot. This is backwards. This is encouraging people to park on the street. Just as an aside. Anyways, did you want to say anything further to your motion?
well, yeah, when we were discussing all this and getting people's the public to discuss. The public came forward and they made it clear that they would like to see paid parking. And then we brought, well, we would have paid parking on the street. But they're looking at paid parking during the day when people are going to the beach during the day. At the end of the day, when the beach empties and people want to go down to the beach to walk their dog or take a walk themselves. I know dogs aren't allowed, but they do it anyway. And they want to go for a walk themselves. The locals, I don't have a problem with them pulling into a parking lot and going down to the beach and taking a walk for an hour and coming back. But if you're going to hit them for $4 or $8 so that they can go down, they run into somebody on the beach and they get talking. Now it's $8 to park. They're going to be parking all over the streets. They're going to be doing everything illegal that they can do illegal. And I'm going to tell you, the people in the community did not want that. They didn't anticipate paying for parking from midnight till 9 o'clock in the morning in a municipal lot. I mean, we can nickel and dime people and get them upset over and over again, right? But that's not what the intent was from the people that came forward. And I don't think that we should be charging them when we're not charging to get on the beach.
Councillor Lubberts, I'm wondering whether we shouldn't just, whether somebody shouldn't defer this to May the 13th so that staff can take another look at this whole thing with respect to the parking fees, because there's a number of issues that I think really need to be thought through. Councillor Butler, you're prepared to move that to May the 13th. Is there a seconder? Councillor Zanko. So to the timing, so this would be deferred to May the 13th. It'd have to be a special council meeting, but we're going to end up having a special council meeting in any event that night. So any questioning of the timing? All those in favor of deferring this to May the 13th? Opposed? That's carried. That's 59. 59. That was but May the 13th. Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to the bylaw package as amended? If Councillor Noyes?
Mayor Redekop. Basically, it's on the same report, but it's on a different issue.
If it's on 59, it's been
It has nothing to do
deferred.
with parking, though.
If it's on 59, it's been deferred. It's on bylaw 59, it's been deferred.
Okay.
Which only deals with parking. Are you sure you've got the right bylaw? The beach admission fees, this is
Yes.
also in there. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. That's been deferred. Okay. I'm going to go to third and final reading of the amended package. Councillor Butler, 56, I think, and 58 are out.
Yes, and now 59, correct? Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubenel, and that bylaws 40-2019, 53-2019, 54-2019, 55-2019, 57-2019, 60-2019, 61-2019, 62-2019, 63-2019, and 64-2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
So I want to apologize to the gentleman from the region who's been here all night, waiting to answer any questions that we might have. If anybody has any questions about the transfer of delegation of licensing responsibility for adult entertainment establishments. There are no questions on that. Councillor Noyes?
I did have one question, and unfortunately, it's probably not really related to the individual here. I'm just wondering if this now goes to the region, is there any cost savings to the town if we're no longer doing it?
Well, the town isn't doing it now. It's been done. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a gentleman and a lady. I apologize. And your names for the record? Okay, so there have been no costs to the municipality. This has been managed by the Police Services Board up until now. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Very much apologize for you having to be here this long. We probably should have put you on Skype and you could have simply been available if we needed you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to any of the other bylaws? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, I just want to, when I was listening to the bylaw being read off, it seemed to me that Councillor Butler included 59-2019. That's been deferred, so we're not giving that third and final reading, are we?
Well, she has it marked as deferred. Did you read it off? No, it wasn't included.
Huh?
It wasn't.
It wasn't? Okay, good.
Okay. No, we're not going to vote on that. It's been deferred. Okay, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. So then let's go back to first and second reading for bylaw number 56, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw number 56, 2019, to amend zoning bylaw number 12990 as amended, removal of holding provision, Peace Bridge, Village Phase 1, Ashton Homes, Western Limited, Aldo Versilio, and bylaw number 58, 2019.
No. Can't do 58. We're just doing 56. Because I've got a conflict on 58.
Okay.
Councillor Dubineau has one on 56, so we'll deal with 56. Thank you. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any questions or comments with respect to that bylaw? If not, Councillor Butler, would you do third and final reading, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw 56-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Zanko, could I give you the chair for the dealing of bylaw 58, please? So you'll note that Councillor Noyes has the first and second reading, Councillor Butler third and final.
Okay. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Zanko. It's getting real late. Bylaw number 58, 2019, to accept and declare lands as public highway on the west side of Ridge Road North, 1201 Ridge Road North, Scott Hunter.
Are there any comments or questions? First and second reading. Councillor Luberts? Oh. Councillor Butler's, or Councillor Dubineau, were you the seconder? You're the seconder. Councillor Butler is the seconder. All those in favor? That carries. Councillor Butler for third and final reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw 58-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
All those in favor? That carries. And the chair back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. That then takes us to the confirmatory bylaw, and that would be Councillor first and second reading. Councillor Dubineau.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw number 65-2019 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on April 15th, 2019, and its special council meetings held on April 16th, 2019, and April 23rd, 2019 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Lubert, you have third and final reading for the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, thank you very much. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mcdermott. That bylaw number 65-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Councillor Noyes?
Yes, there's an accessibility advisory committee meeting on Tuesday, April 30th at, I think it's usually 5 p.m. And there's also a senior citizen advisory meeting on May 1st at 10 o'clock, and that's at the Lions Center.
Any other meetings? Councillor Zanko?
Thank you. There's a Waverly Beach Ad Hoc Committee being held here on May 1st at 5:30 p.m. in Conference Room 1.
What time was that again?
It's Wednesday, May 1st, 5:30 p.m.
5:30. Thank you. Councillor Duveneau.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a Community Gaming Development Corporation meeting here at Town Hall tomorrow at 5:30 in Conference Room 1. We also have a Transit Advisory Committee meeting here at Town Hall on Thursday, April 25th at 1:15 p.m.
At 1:15 or 1? I thought it was 1.
I'd have to double check because I have it in my calendar as 1:15.
That's the 25th, right?
Right.
Yep, 1:15. That's correct. You guys have a meeting? Is that what you're...
Yes.
A meeting tonight, during our meeting.
I know.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Noyes reminded me that on May 1st, we have a planning and development meeting at 4 p.m. here at Town Hall.
Any others? And on April the 29th at 5 o'clock, we're having a YMCA task force meeting. Councillors Duveneau and Zanko are the council reps on that task force, and we'll be able to provide some information to council after that meeting as to the status of what's going on. Okay. Councillor, who has the final? Isn't that interesting? This now seems to be this now seems to be your realm. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mcdermott, that council adjourns at 9:08 p.m. to reconvene into regular meeting of council on May 21st, 2019.
Any questions? Any comments? All those in favor? That is carried. So this meeting is over. You'll recall that we started the evening with a closed session matter, so we're going back in. That was recessed, so we're going back into closed session. Councillor Mcdermott, you council chamber, after having come out of the closed session, you have a resolution for us to rise.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes. The council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 9:41 p.m. with respect to the following items: YMCA of Niagara, that council rises without report.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Butler, you have the motion to adjourn.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Duveneau, that council adjourns at 9:41 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on April 23rd, 2019.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Thank you very much, all.